Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's World News Wrap-Up. Today will be basic level, so around B1 or A2. Might be a little difficult, but let's give it a try. It's good to have you here. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable. If you haven't already, feel free to grab something cool or warm to drink. Today, I'm having my glass of peach tea once again. It's cold outside here, but for some reason, I keep coming back to peach tea. All right. Let me know in the comments what you're drinking today. Today's date is November 23rd, 2025. We will discuss the weekend's news covering around Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll begin with talking about the weather here in Seoul. Temperatures were cool this morning, around 4 degrees Celsius, and they rose to about 11 or around 13, I think, I saw when I went to get coffee in the afternoon. Sky stayed mostly clear with a few light clouds moving through. We had some gentle northwesterly wind, so the air felt crisp but comfortable. I was able to wear this sweatshirt outside without a jacket today, so this is quite nice. Temperatures are falling closer to 0 tonight, and if you're outside here in Seoul, dress warmly. Let's get down to the news. Our first story and first section will be about world news and big headlines, okay? Our first one is talking about the Ukraine peace plan. Officials from the United States, Ukraine, and Europe met this week in Geneva, Switzerland. They discussed a new peace plan created in the United States with 28 main points. Many people in Ukraine believe the plan is not fair. It asks Ukraine to give up some land and limit the size of its military. Some leaders say it feels like surrender. Surrender means to give up, to quit the fight. American officials say the plan could help end the fighting. European leaders say they want to be more included in the decisions. These talks show that the world is still trying to find a path to peace, but it is increasingly difficult when countries disagree on what is fair. Our second story is about the G20 leaders meeting in South Africa. Leaders from major world economies met in Johannesburg, South Africa, for the G20 summit. The theme of this year's meeting is solidarity, meaning to stand together firmly, equality, to be on the same ground, to be equal, and sustainability, to maintain something or to keep something for a long time. They discussed world conflicts, climate change, global trade, and new technologies like artificial intelligence. This is the first G20 meeting ever held on the African continent. For many African nations, it is an important moment to show their role in world affairs. Some leaders did not attend, but cooperation is still the main goal of the summit. China warns Japan over Taiwan comments. China criticized Japan this week for sending what it calls wrong signals about Taiwan. Japan has recently spoken more openly about security in the region. China says Japan should be careful because the issue is sensitive, meaning it's easy to cause a problem or easy to irritate. You can have sensitive skin or sensitive security issues. Japan says it wants peace and stability near Taiwan and has concerns about China's growing military strength. The vocabulary in this section: peace plan. I'm sure you can guess this one. It's a plan to stop a war. A summit, we've discussed before, is a big meeting between world leaders. Surrender, stopping the fight. Sensitive, to be delicate or easy to cause damage. And stability, to be firm and hold tight. So something is stable, like a table. It has good stability. All right, we're going to move into the world of sports now. This is our first very basic news, so please let me know what you think in the comments down below. National football teams are preparing for important tournaments next year. Coaches are testing new players, and many teams are trying younger lineups. Lineups is who's going to play in what order. This week, Argentina, France, and Japan played friendly matches to check their team chemistry, how well the players work together. That's the meaning of chemistry in this situation. Fans are watching to see which players will make the final squads. The NBA season is now in full swing. Teams like the Boston Celtics and Denver Nuggets have strong early records. Many young players are showing great progress as well. Coaches say this season feels very competitive. I'm sure living in Korea, you know the word competitive. But just in case you don't, when many teams or people have a real chance to win and they have to try very hard. Several games have gone into overtime, showing how close the competition is. Sports officials are reviewing several marathon results after some runners finished with very fast times. Officials want to confirm that the route distances and timing systems were correct. This word route can be route or route. Many Americans say both ways. I usually say route. Unless it's a road in America, and then it's a route. Strange. I will look into that and explain it more in a future one if it comes up. This is common when new timing technology is used. Runners say they want a fair assessment. Assessment is a careful and honest check to make sure it is correct. The vocabulary for our sports section we just discussed: chemistry, how well players work together; competitive, when many people or teams can win and must try very hard; assessment is a careful check or judgment. Now, let's talk about Korean news. Transportation officials say that heavy traffic is expected this weekend as many families travel to visit relatives. Highways may be crowded from Friday evening to late Sunday. Officials recommend leaving early in the morning or later at night to avoid delays. Delays is when something takes much longer than expected. For example, your airplane is delayed, means it will not arrive until later. Train and bus tickets are nearly sold out. That's the side point here. Since I moved to Seoul, something I noticed is I rarely can get a train ticket whenever I want. When I lived in Daejeon, I can usually buy a train ticket pretty easily. But in Seoul, very difficult, especially the SRT. Let's get down to housing prices. Housing prices in Seoul increased a small amount this month. Experts say this may show growing confidence in the market, but younger buyers still say prices feel too high. The government says it will continue discussing support for first-time home buyers. New safety measures have been put in schools. Education officials introduce new safety measures. Safety measures are actions to fix a safety problem. It's like safety measures in a school might be CCTV or locks on windows or not allowing people to come in without a card, something like that. For elementary schools, this includes more crossing guards, good safety measure, clearer signs for drivers, very good, and regular safety drills. Safety drill is practicing events for emergencies. So pretending the emergency is happening. Parents welcome the changes and hope they reduce accidents near schools. When I was young, when I went to kindergarten, one of our classmates ran into the road and was killed by a car. And it made us have many more safety measures. It was very scary. The vocabulary in our Korean news section is delays, meaning something takes longer than expected. Measures, actions taken to solve a problem. And drills, pretend or practice exercise for emergencies. Let's go into the world of technology. New smartphone chips improve battery life. That'll be very nice, right? Several tech companies announced new smartphone chips this week. They are designed to use less energy and improve how phones handle AI tasks. This means longer battery life and faster performance. I hadn't considered that until I read about this. Because people use AI a lot, and AI takes a lot of processing power, and sometimes takes a long time to think, it will drain the battery much quicker. It was a very interesting read. Number 2, websites strengthen cybersecurity. After several cyber attacks, major websites have upgraded their security. This includes stronger passwords, two-step logins, and tools to detect suspicious activity. Suspicious means activity that looks unusual or unsafe. If you have suspicious activity on your bank account, you might want to go to the bank immediately. Companies say these updates are important because attacks are becoming more common. Recently, in Korea, we had a data breach over, what was it? One of the phone companies. Was it KT? SKT, I think. They had some suspicious activity. Story 3, electric car chargers expand worldwide. More electric car charging stations are being built around the world. Governments and companies are working together to add, sorry about that. Governments and companies are working together to add fast chargers to highways and parking areas. This makes using electric cars easier for longer trips. One of my acquaintances, he needed to charge his car, and he saw on the phone app, oh, I can charge my car now. So he went down to put his car in the charging area, but somebody was already there. So he watched Netflix and waited for the person to leave, and he fell asleep in his car and slept all night by mistake. So he woke up the next day with a pain in his neck. All right, this makes using electric cars easier for long trips. All right, our vocabulary is efficiently. This is done with less time or less energy. We all want to do our work efficiently. Suspicious, something that seems unsafe or strange. When I'm walking alone at night, sometimes I can see a suspicious person. Expand is to grow or increase. We all want to expand our bank account, right? All right, let's move into our science section. Our first story is about high-altitude telescope that changes what we know about black holes. I really like science, so this was a very interesting read. Scientists using a high-altitude telescope, this is a telescope lifted high into the sky, often by a special balloon, but not quite in space, have discovered new clues about how black holes behave. Black holes are places in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape. Because they are so far away and so extreme, they're very hard to study. This new telescope looks at very high energy light near black holes. The data suggests that older theories about how black holes pull in gas and dust may be incomplete. Scientists say this could improve our understanding of how black holes grow and how they affect the galaxies around them. They also believe this technique may help future missions study even more distant objects in space. A super-Earth has been found in the habitable zone. These days, a lot of exoplanets in the habitable zone are being spotted. Astronomers have discovered a new planet only 18 light years away. This one is quite close. It is called a super-Earth. This is a planet larger than Earth, but smaller than Neptune, and is usually a rocky planet, sometimes with some sign of water or another ammonia or some other substance like that in their atmosphere. This planet is in the habitable zone of the star, which means it sits at just the right distance between the sun and being too far away, where liquid water could exist. Too far away, it freezes. Too close, it boils, right? If the right conditions are present, that is. Scientists still do not know if the planet has an atmosphere, oceans, or life, but it is considered a promising target for future telescopes that can study air and chemical signals on distant worlds. Saturn's rings will disappear from view. NASA says that later this month, Saturn's rings will disappear. They will appear to disappear. This is interesting science, but it is a little bit clickbait. The rings are still there, of course, but because Saturn is tilted, there are times when we cannot see the rings in a tilted manner. Instead, we see them edge on, like that, which means we see only the extremely thin side. When this happens, the rings seem to vanish. This event happens roughly every 14 or 15 years, I believe. Astronomers say this is a rare chance to study how light moves through the ring material, which is made of ice and rock. Our vocabulary for this one is black hole, a place in space with very strong gravity where even light cannot escape. Super Earth, a planet bigger than Earth but smaller than Neptune, and usually is a rocky planet. Habitable zone, the area around a star where liquid water could exist because of the temperature. A light year is the distance light travels in 1 year, which is huge, huge, huge. Edge on is when we see something from the side, making it look very thin. All right, how are you liking it so far, everyone? If you like this kind of content and this speed, this basic English informative speed, let me know. Like and subscribe so I can continue to make this kind of content. Last but not least, let's talk about good news. I always like to leave on good news. The world is too full of bad news, I think. Story number 1, this is huge. Polio cases dropped by 99% worldwide. There is very encouraging news from the World Health Organization. New data shows that global polio cases have dropped by more than 99% since the 1990s. Polio is a disease that can paralyze children. Vaccines have dramatically reduced the number of cases from hundreds of thousands per year to around 50 per year. This is one of the biggest public health successes in modern history. Genuinely amazing. A new treatment may prevent blindness in diabetic patients. Let's take a look. Researchers in the United Kingdom have identified a possible root cause. A root cause is the main reason why something begins, of a condition called diabetic retinopathy. Retino, it has to do with the retina of the eye, and diabetic is the adjective for diabetes. The disease where you have bad blood sugar. They found that a protein named LRG1 may trigger the disease. Even better, the scientists have developed a new drug that blocks this protein in early tests. If it works in human trials, it could help millions of people keep their vision. I have a few family members who have diabetes, so this will be a very big blessing for them to not have to lose their sight. Ancient canoes found beneath a lake. Archaeologists in Wisconsin, in the United States, have found 16 ancient canoes at the bottom of a lake. Some of the canoes are thousands of years old. The site is being called a prehistoric canoe parking lot. Very funny. Because the canoes are grouped together in one area. These discoveries help scientists understand how Native American communities traveled, fished, and lived thousands of years ago. Local communities say the find is meaningful because it connects them back to their ancestors. As for our vocabulary, we have polio, which is a serious disease that can paralyze children. A root cause, which is the main reason something begins. Retinopathy or retinopathy is a disease that harms the eye. Archaeologist is a scientist who studies human history using old objects. This is mostly true. Archaeologists and anthropologists work together, usually in this field. And that brings us to the end of this weekend's news. Thank you for spending this time with me. We talked about new discoveries in space, a promising new planet, Saturn's surprising disappearing rings, health breakthroughs that could save lives and save eyes, and a beautiful connection to ancient history. As always, I hope this helped you learn something new in more calm and easier to digest English. Before you go, let me know which story stood out to you today. And of course, let me know what you drank today. What pleasant thing did you make? Do you prefer warm things in the winter or cold? I see a lot of Korean people drinking cold things, even though their hands are freezing. In fact, maybe you can still see it. Not really. I had a cold coffee outside when I was walking with my friend, and it got so cold it dried my finger out and it ripped open while we were walking. Very surprising. Anyway, thank you for listening. This has been Corey Teacher with our basic news. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye. Welcome back to the channel. Today's news will cover Korean news in intermediate English. I picked trending topics from all over Korea, and we're going to talk about them one by one. Before we get started, let's get something delicious to drink to keep our throats nice and ready to go. I got some mango tea today. It's the first time I'm trying it, but thought I'd give it a shot. Ooh, it's kind of sweet, actually. Not bad. I didn't expect it to be sweet. All right, today's news, we have several stories. Our top story will begin with Naver and Dunamu. I'm sure you've heard about this. There's a major business deal taking shape between Naver, which is Korea's largest tech companies, or one of the top companies, and Dunamu, the country's biggest cryptocurrency operator. The two companies are preparing a comprehensive stock swap, which means Dunamu shareholders would receive new shares from Naver Financial, and Dunamu would become a 100% subsidiary under Naver's financial unit. We'll talk about that word later. In return, Dunamu chairman Song Chi-hyung is expected to become the largest shareholder of Naver Financial. For Naver, this deal is seen as a way to gain a new growth engine, which is a new source of business growth. Although Naver still reports steady profits, its growth rate has slowed sharply in recent years. Search, commerce, fintech, and content, Naver's main business areas, are no longer expanding as quickly as they were before. In the old days, Naver was necessary all the time, but these days, not so much. Naver's operating profit ratio has also fallen compared to earlier years, and the company's stock price has decreased from 400,000 won range to around 200,000 won range over the past 5 years. By acquiring Dunamu, Naver would gain access to a company that earns over 1 trillion won per year in operating profit. Thanks to its dominant position in cryptocurrency trading, Dunamu has also over 5 trillion won in accumulated cash reserves. Naver hopes this powerful cash flow will help it fund future investments, including large-scale AI development, and stabilize its long-term growth. For Dunamu, joining Naver offers stability and the chance to expand beyond Korea. The cryptocurrency industry has been facing strong regulations, slow legal reforms, and uncertain future markets. Being backed by Naver's ecosystem may help Dunamu enter new fields, such as payment services or international markets. However, experts are puzzled about one thing. Why is Dunamu, which is much bigger in revenue and profit, choosing to become a subsidiary rather than forming a lighter partnership? Many analysts say the real answer may lie in the personal decisions of the founders. Naver's Lee Hae-jin, some sound, did you hear it? And Dunamu's Song Chi-hyung, who both have a history of making bold, long-term strategic moves. Some critics also warn that combining fintech and crypto could increase regulatory risks. Talk about that later as well. Especially if the two companies move into stablecoins, which is a type of cryptocurrency designed to have a stable value. Financial regulators may tighten rules if the partnership expands too quickly. Even so, many in the IT and finance industries believe this deal could reshape Korea's digital economy. So there are 5 words I want to go over. The first is subsidiary. The param pronunciation is a little bit strange. Subsidiary. It's a company that's completely controlled by another company. A growth engine is something that helps a company grow in the future. Naver hopes Dunamu will help it grow in the future. Operating profit, the money a company earns after subtracting basic business costs. It's a company version of net income. Regulatory risk is the danger that government rules will cause problems for a business. This is especially true in AI and also in crypto these days. Stable coins are a currency designed to keep the price steady rather. All right. Story number 2, also a big story. Samsung's restructuring its leadership. Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong has carried out a major leadership reshuffle after his Supreme Court acquittal. Instead of a dramatic generational change, Samsung chose a strategy built on 2 goals. They said, number 1, they wanted to strengthen top-level technology talent. And number 2, keep the organization stable during a time of global uncertainty. Samsung announced only 4 major promotions or role changes, far fewer than last year's 9. But even with the smaller scale, half of the newly appointed leaders are top technical experts, showing Lee's strong belief that technology is the strategy. One of the most notable moves is Samsung hiring Dr. Park Hong-gun. This is a Harvard University professor as the new head of SAIT, the Samsung Advanced Institute of Technology. Park is known as a leader in nanotechnology with achievements like he was a top graduate in Seoul National University. He also has a PhD from Stanford. He was the first tenured professor at Harvard, and he also got global recognition in quantum computing and neuromorphic chips as well. Some observers even mention Park as a potential future Nobel Prize candidate, which would be huge for Samsung if it happened. Bringing him into Samsung signals Lee's long-term plan to secure next-generation technologies that will decide the company's future. Samsung also promoted Yoon Jang-hyun, the head of Samsung's venture investment, to become the new CTO of DX, which is Device Experience Division, and heading of Samsung Research. He previously led software, IoT development, and investments in AI, robotics, and biotechnology. Samsung plans to apply AI-based features across all of its products, phones, TV, appliances, etc., to sharpen competitiveness in a crowded market. The 2 top leaders of Samsung's largest divisions will remain, however. Jun Yong-hyun, head of the DS, which is Device Solutions Division, continues to manage memory and semiconductor businesses. Under him, Samsung reorganized its memory division and stabilized the large HBM, high bandwidth memory, business, an area Samsung wants to lead before the next semiconductor boom. Ro Tae-moon, head of the DX division, remains in charge of MX, which is the mobile division, as well. After the sudden death of former Vice Chairman Hang Jong-hee, Ro worked as the acting head and helped calm the organization in a time of turmoil. Now fully confirmed, he will continue strengthening the Galaxy ecosystem, connecting mobile, home electronics, and smart devices. But another important development is the retirement of Jung Hyun-ho, long known as Samsung's number 2 figure. His departure comes as Samsung upgraded the long-running business support task force into a permanent organization called the Business Support Office. The new office, led by Park Hak-kyu, will coordinate strategy, finance, and organizational decisions for Samsung's electronics businesses, similar to the old Future Strategy Office, but officially more limited. Analysts say this change signals a return to a more centralized decision-making structure now that Lee Jae-yong's legal issues have ended. As a quick aside, please forgive me. I decided to put the names in English. It was a mistake. It's much harder to read the English versions. All right. Lee Jae-young's global momentum. After being cleared of charges, Lee has accelerated global activities. He confirmed major deals with foreign partners, including securing HBM4 memory supply for NVIDIA, closing a 23 trillion won AI chip contract with Tesla, and signing a letter of intent with OpenAI for large-scale HBM supply, meaning they have the intention of working together, a kind of promise. Industry watchers say that these moves show Samsung is building a long-term plan to dominate the AI chip, semiconductor, and next-generation device markets. All right. The words from this story, we've got about 5. Reshuffle. To shuffle is to mix cards. To reshuffle is to do it once again. So if you reshuffle a company, you're changing the positions of the leaders or the roles in the company. Succession is the process of choosing the next leader or succession. Strategic is planned for long-term goals. I'm sure you know the word strategy. Strategic is just the adjective. Innovation is new and creative technologies. Think innovate or invent. New. Stability is something that's not changing, staying steady, like we talked about before. All right. Our next story is about banks. Korean banks are once again shutting down major loan programs, causing frustration and anxiety among customers who need financing for housing or daily life. As of November 24th, KB Kookmin Bank has stopped accepting all new applications for mortgage loans, jeonse loans, and unsecured loans, both online and in person. Hana Bank will also limit new mortgage and jeonse loans starting November 25th, today. Although Shinhan Uri and Nonghyup have not yet closed their loan applications, experts say they may soon face a flood of loan requests and could be forced to halt lending as well. Why is this happening? The main reason is government limits on total household lending. If a bank exceeds its annual loan growth target, financial regulators reduce the bank's lending capacity for the next year, a penalty banks want to avoid. By November 20th, the combined household loan increase at the 5 major banks had reached 9.69 trillion won, far above their combined limit of 8.07 trillion won. Removing Nonghyup, which is still within its limits, the other 4 banks exceeded their target by over 32%. Banks say the situation became harder to manage because of repeated changes in real estate regulations this year, including the sudden June 27th policy, which I'm sure you heard about, which cut household loan targets in half for the second half of the year. Strong demand is making the problem much worse. Banks report that demand for unsecured loans has been rising sharply. As investment markets, including stocks and gold, go up, more customers are borrowing money to invest. Unsecured loan increased by 1.38 trillion won in November alone, compared to a decrease in September. Home buyers and people who need financial support are panicking. On real estate forums, user wrote things like, "I regret not applying earlier this year," or "I was ready to accept high interest rates, but now I don't even have the chance to apply." This shutdown is not new. Last year, banks also exceeded their loan targets and had to stop lending late in the year. One bank had set its loan target too low, so low, in fact, that it exceeded it by nearly 7 times. 7 times. I had to read that 3 times. Banks have since tried to improve risk management by monitoring monthly loan trends and limiting branch-level lending, but the end-of-year shutdown has repeated anyway. Banks will soon begin planning their loan strategies for next year, and the Financial Supervisory Service will coordinate new rules based on those plans. Analysts say banks need to redesign their risk management, because hitting the loan limit too early and shutting the doors at the end of the year has become a recurring problem. Words from this story, we have shutdown, which is to stop services. Household debt, we can guess the meaning. Debt that is held inside of your home. So anyone in your family that lives in the same house. Quota, not to be confused with quote. A quota is a limit or an allowed amount of a certain thing, like a quota on students or a quota on money or a quota on, like when you buy electronics, you can only buy one or two. There's a quota. Regulation is a rule set by the government. And panic, of course, is sudden, strong fear about anything, something that jumps out and scares you, or panic about markets. Back in the banking and life insurance related things, Hanwha Life has bought back the remaining shares of Hanwha Life Financial Services, making it a 100% wholly owned subsidiary once again. The company purchased the final 11.11% stake for 128.5 billion won, regaining full ownership after temporarily giving up part of the shares to outside investors in 2023. Analysts say the move is strategic. Hanwha Life wants to secure future dividend income, cash payments from a subsidiary's profits. So when a subsidiary makes profits, it gives a dividend to the owner of the subsidiary. This happens in banks as well. If you have certain kinds of investment or certain amounts of savings, and strengthen its long-term financial stability. The life insurance industry is under pressure from new accounting rules such as IFRS 17, which is a global insurance accounting standard. These rules require companies to hold more capital, especially through the policy surrender reserve, which is money insurers, they have to set aside a certain amount to refund clients who cancel policies early. This is required by regulation. Because this reserve is considered a legal liability, meaning it is a risk, a legal risk, it reduces the amount of profit that can be used for dividends. Hanwha Life's capital ratio, called KICS, which is the Korean Insurance Capital Standard, is expected to be around 157%, below the 170% level usually needed for strong dividend payments. So by owning Hangumseo completely, Hanwha Life can channel future profits directly back to the parent company, improving its ability to pay dividends later. Today we're in financial news quite a lot in Korea. So Hangumseo has grown rapidly in recent years. Its estimated corporate value has jumped from 650 billion won at launch in 2021 to around 1.7 trillion won today. It already paid out its first dividend last year. Hanwha Life received around 12 billion won. The private equity investor Korea Investment PE received 1.5 billion won. Hangumseo earns stable profits through GA commissions, which are fees from operating a large general insurance agent network. Its business model provides strong, predictable cash flow that is useful for a parent company needing steady income. This year, a company reported 801 billion won in cumulative profit through the third quarter, and analysts expect over 1 trillion won in full year profit again. By regaining full control, Hanwha Life plans to streamline decision-making and strengthen its sales strategy. With 100% ownership, they can coordinate product planning, marketing, and sales more effectively across all channels. The company spokesman said that the acquisition will be positive for Hanwha Life because of Hangumseo's strong profitability and future growth potential. That lots of jargon in that one. I apologize. Let's look through some of them. Subsidiary we talked about before. Dividend is money that a company gives to shareholders or a parent company, which is a shareholder. Liquidity, how easily money can be used. If your money is in real estate, it doesn't have much liquidity, but if it's in a bank, it's very liquid, flows easily. Cash cow, very useful word, something that brings steady money. We use this in everyday speech a lot. I hear it a lot. Valuation, this is a corporate jargon for how much a company is worth, or even real estate can have a valuation. All right, story 5. This one's a little bit sad, but we're out of the financial woods, okay? Vietnamese police have launched an investigation after the body of a Korean man was discovered inside a large blue suitcase in a residential neighborhood of Ho Chi Minh City. According to local reports and the Korean consulate, the body was found on the afternoon of November 23rd. A security guard and several pedestrians noticed a strange smell coming from the suitcase and called the police. When officers arrived, they found the man dead and partially decomposed. This means starting to decay, to fall apart. The victim has been identified as a Korean national, but his name has not been released. 2 Korean men are being questioned now as potential suspects. Witnesses said 2 men were standing near the suitcase shortly before the discovery. When people began to gather, the 2 men quickly got into a taxi and fled. Vietnamese police later detained 2 Korean men believed to be connected to the case and are now questioning them as possible suspects. Because the body was decomposed, investigators are trying to determine the exact time and cause of death. Police have blocked off the area and are reviewing evidence from nearby buildings. The Korean consulate in Ho Chi Minh City confirmed that the victim is Korean and said it has contacted the family already. Officials also stated they will provide consular assistance, which is help and support given by the Korean embassy or any embassy, to Korean citizens or whichever citizen. For example, I can get consular assistance from the American embassy here in Seoul. So we have a few words. Suspect is a person that the police think did a crime. So a murder suspect is a suspect, a person we guess or think did the murder. Investigation, of course, I'm sure you know this word. Police study what is happening, or people can study what is happening. Decomposition is when the body breaks down after death. Like for example, when you have vegetables in your house for too long, they begin to decompose or wilt or rot. All of these are similar meaning words. And of course, the embassy, the 대사관, is the government office in a foreign country. All right. Let's get off the sad news a little bit. Take a little sip, little refresher. Yeah, very sad news. All right, let's talk about something a little bit more close to home. The Korean government is making the biggest reform in 76 years to the national civil servant on-duty system, the 당직 제도, which was first created in 1949, if you can believe it. The changes will expand work-from-home duty shifts, allow combined duty teams across multiple agencies, and introduce AI-based call handling systems. The new rules were announced by the Ministry of Personnel Management. Well, we can talk about that sometime. On November 24th, and will begin test operations in early next year in 2026, with full implementation planned for around April. The reform will apply to 1,171 government organizations and around 500,000 civil servants each year. So some key changes. Work from home duty will be allowed. Previously, agencies had to get approval from higher ministries before letting employees handle duty shifts from home. Under the new rules, agencies can decide this on their own, as long as they have proper systems in place, such as remote security equipment, communication networks, and monitoring systems. There will be no need for separate duty rooms at agencies with 24-hour situation rooms. Let's break that down. Some government offices already run 24-hour monitoring centers called situation rooms. Since these rooms already function like duty rooms, the new rules allows the two to be merged. letting agencies use staff more flexibly. Good. Shared duty shifts between nearby agencies is also something new. Currently, each agency must have at least one person on duty every night. Under the new system, neighboring agencies can combine their teams and share 1 to 3 duty officers. For example, 3 officers could cover 8 agencies inside the Daejeon government complex. AI calling handling system has been introduced. Agencies that receive many phone calls at night or on holidays will start using AI support. Regular civil complaint calls will be automatically sent to the national hotline system, the 국민 신문고. Emergency calls will be forwarded to the 119 fire medical or 112 police duty officers will handle urgent or important issues directly. I combined the 2 words. So some expected benefits. The Personnel Ministry expects the reform to save 16.9 to 17.8 billion won per year in duty-related expenses. Also reduce unnecessary post-duty rest days for about 446,000 civil servants, and free up an estimated 3.56 million working hours annually. Officials say the change will modernize the outdated duty system, improve efficiency, and reduce the burden on public workers while maintaining essential government services. So we've got 5 words from here. Reform, to reform, is to re-change something. Similar to reshuffle, but this one is about making an improvement or a change to a system rather than reshuffling people. Telework is work from home. Television means far vision. Telephone means far here. Telework means far work. Easy. Integrated system, one combined system. Integrate means to make one. Pilot program. This follows a similar thing to pilot episodes of television. This is a test program. Automation, automate, means to make something automatic. Machines do it. Like an automobile automatically moves. A car automatically moves. All right, let's move on to our next story. Back on the ferries. Investigators have revealed shocking new findings about the Queen Zenobia II, the large car ferry that ran aground near Cheongsan Island in Shinhan County on November 19th. We heard about this a few days ago, about how the first mate was on his phone, but there's more bad news. According to the Mokpo Coast Guard, the 60-year-old captain had never once entered the ship's bridge. The bridge is the jotashil. It's like the control room where the ship is steered. During more than 1,000, you didn't hear that wrong, 1,000 previous trips through the same narrow waters. Under Korean maritime law, captains are required to personally navigate narrow routes called pilotage waters. Pilotage waters are narrow areas that require special caution. In Korean, I think it's hyopsuro like area, very thin. The captain is now under investigation. 7 ferry employees were questioned as witnesses, all confirmed that since the ship began operating in February of 2023, the captain left navigation entirely to junior officers and never appeared on the bridge when passing the accident area. The Coast Guard believes the captain failed his legal duty and has booked him on charges of gross negligence causing injury. I looked this one up. In Korean is 중과실치상, and violating the Seafarers Act, which is 산원법 위반. It's hard to explain exactly without legal explanation, so we'll just use Korean this time. A VTS controller, which is a vessel traffic service operator, the person who monitors ship movements, is also under investigation Investigators say the controller did not notice that the ferry was off its normal route before the grounding. The controller claims the route deviation alarm, the 항로 이탈 alarm, has been turned off. The Coast Guard is now trying to determine when and why the alarm was disabled. The West Sea Regional Coast Guard explained that alarms for small ships often ring too frequently and disrupt monitoring, which may be the system was turned off earlier. But this is still under investigation. Simulations show that the grounding was preventable. A simulation by Mokpo Maritime University showed the ferry needed to stay at least 500 meters away from the island to avoid impact. If the ship failed to change direction at least 190 meters before exiting the safe route, the accident could not be avoided. Experts said that the exact turning point can depend on the judgment of the officer on watch and the VTS controller's experience. On watch means to be the person who is currently observing or monitoring or being the one who keeps track of information. For example, someone who guards a door, like guarding a palace or guarding against North Korea, they are on watch. However, in this case, because the ferry's speed and path changed from normal patterns, the controller should have noticed the danger. It seems that the real problem is the distracted crew. The Coast Guard concluded that the first mate and the helmsman, we talked about before, the crew member who physically steers the ship is called helmsman, were using their phones and not paying attention at the time of the accident. Both have been detained on charges of gross negligence causing injury. The Queen Zenobia II had 267 people on board when it left Mokpo and ran aground at 8:16 p.m. Fortunately, all passengers survived, but investigators say the accident was entirely preventable. Here's some words here. We got wheelhouse. The wheel is what we turn, and the house is the area that is around the wheel. So it's the control room. Grounding is to go from the ocean onto the ground. Whales can do this. They can ground themselves. Some orcas can ground themselves on purpose to catch food. Negligence is not doing your duty carefully. You can be negligent with children. You can be negligent at your job. You can be negligent about your house, etc. Simulation is a computer test of a situation, or it can be a real-life test as well. Radar is a machine that finds objects with signals. Like LADAR is with lasers, radar is with radio. All right, moving on. This one's a little bit scary. All of them have been a little scary today. Korean police and cybersecurity experts are warning about a sharp increase in online sales of student and parent personal information, especially from wealthy districts like Gangnam. Take a little drink here. How are you guys doing today? I know the week just started, but I hope it's going well. All right. When asked about reducing ROK and U.S. joint military exercises, Lee said, "Such decisions depend on future conditions. If a strong peace system is firmly established, some drills may not be needed." He also noted that U.S. President Donald Trump dislikes costly joint exercises, but emphasized that South Korea must ultimately take responsibility for its own defense. Lee said that Korea's defense industry has grown remarkably and now holds a strong competitive edge. He expects major results soon in overseas weapons sales and cooperation projects, such as the joint development and production with other countries. He also revealed that Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi privately suggested that Korean companies take on the 3 to 4 trillion won expansion project for Cairo Airport and possibly operate the airport afterwards. Lee said earlier preparation and deeper cooperation might have made even greater results possible. So we have border, the MDL, which we talked about, is the military line between Korea and North Korea. Retaliation is an action taken after an attack. It's like revenge, but specifically in some attack. Deterrence is power to stop attacks, to deter attacks. For example, using SAM missiles to launch down other incoming missiles. This is a deterrent. Provocation, an action that causes conflict. Yeah, we have a lot of those in the world these days. All right, now, in a bit more of an interesting story, a 66-year-old Japanese man secretly won 600 million yen, about 56 billion Korean won, in the lottery and hid it from his wife for 6 months while living a luxurious double life, before finally giving most of the money up for his family's future. The man, known only as A, to keep his privacy, is a retired employee of a major manufacturing company. He lived modestly in Tokyo with his wife, surviving on a monthly pension of 300,000 yen. His strict and frugal wife controlled their finances closely. She didn't allow him to drink beer and insisted they only buy cheap old cars. A's daily routine included buying several 300 yen lottery tickets after breakfast. One day, he was told he needed to go to the bank and soon learned he had won an enormous jackpot. He said the amount felt unreal and even frightening. Because his wife was extremely strict with money, he decided not to tell her. Instead, he pretended he had only won 5 million yen and used that excuse to make small home improvements. In secret, however, he bought a luxury car, stayed repeatedly at high-end hot spring resorts, and traveled around Japan, spending 18 million yen in only 6 months, which is still, he has so much more money left. To avoid suspicion, he parked the new car far away in a separate lot, wore old clothes, and limited contact with people he knew. But the double life soon brought guilt and loneliness. While traveling, he saw families enjoying time together and began thinking about his own. He remembered painful memories of his father who suffered after divorce and bankruptcy, and realized the hidden money was creating emotional turmoil. A said he would have been proud if the money were earned through hard work, but the money gained by luck made him feel unstable. Eventually, he met with a financial planner and decided to put about 500 million into insurance, naming his wife and children as beneficiaries. He said he wants the money to protect his family after his death. The story caused heated debate online, with many commenters saying that sudden wealth can lead to identity problems and emotional conflict rather than happiness. A little side story. In the US, most lottery winners have a similar problem, except they usually go broke. Somehow they are able to spend all the money very quickly. I can't remember the statistics now, but it's very common. So some words from this. Winnings is the money that you win from something, or a prize, like a car or something. Frugal, useful word. It means careful not to spend money. For example, if you want to have kimbap, you cannot get the expensive one, get the cheap one. If you want to eat takeout, we're going to do pickup because we don't want to pay the fee, and it cannot be fancy, like this kind of thing. We'll eat McDonald's dollar menu, like that. Windfall, very useful, is a sudden large amount of money or a sudden large change in your income or fate. Like, oh, we had a windfall. Like wind in your sails, kind of. Inheritance is the money you give your family or receive from an older family member when they die. Or you can receive it before they die too. They can give it to you directly. Identity crisis is confusion about who you are. A little bit more sad news. Byung Jun, a well-known TV announcer from the 1970s and 80s here in Korea, who later became a 3-term lawmaker, has passed away at the age of 85. He died on the night of November 23rd at Himmin Hospital in Jaehyung-dong, Seoul. His funeral is being held at the Asan Medical Center. Born in Seosan, Chungcheongnam-do, in 1940, Byun began his broadcasting career in 1963 at the Central Broadcasting Station, the predecessor of KBS. He moved to MBC in 1969, where he gained nationwide popularity hosting programs such as Myeongang Undongho, a cheerful sports variety show, Yukwaehan Changbekjeon, both beloved entertainment programs in the 1970s and 80s. Byun entered politics in the mid-1990s. He joined the United Liberal Democrats, which is the English words for the Jaminrong, in 1995. Milyon, is that right? In 1995, and was elected to the National Assembly the following year, representing his hometown district of Sosan-taeyeon. He went on to serve 3 terms in the 15th, 16th, and 18th National Assemblies. His funeral procession will take place on the morning of November 27th. Some words from this story. We have legacy, which is what a person leaves behind, whether that be your family, your story, your money, what you did in life. This is what's left behind. This is your legacy. A veteran is someone with many years of experience in any field, military, education, business, anything. Broadcasting, to cast is to throw. Broad is over some bandwidth or over some distance. TV or radio work, basically. Condolences is an expression of sympathy, or it's a kind of sad feeling about some sad event. Usually someone's passing. All right. Government and national pension services move to defend the won. As the won and dollar exchange rate climbs towards 1,480 won, the Korean government and the National Pension Service, NPS, have activated a new 4-way coordination group to help stabilize the foreign exchange market. The Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health and Welfare, Bank of Korea, and the NPS held their first meeting and announced they will work together to support both market stability and pension investment returns. This signals that the government is considering restarting strategic currency hedging. This is a practice where investors sell dollars and buy won to protect against exchange rate loss. What is it? I looked it up earlier. Hwanheji. So why now? On November 24th, the exchange rate closed at 1,477.1 won per dollar, the highest level in more than 7 months. The rate started lower earlier in the day due to expectations of U.S. interest rate cuts, but reversed course when foreign investors sold large amounts of Korean stocks, creating demand for dollar repatriation. This is sending money back overseas. Because the high exchange rate is not coming down, the government is now preparing direct measures to reduce volatility. On November 24th, a search on major portal site brought up dozens of advertisements openly selling private data. One seller claimed to have thousands of records containing names, phone numbers, addresses, and birth dates of Gangnam families, priced at 600 won per person, which is mind-blowing. Some sellers even admitted without hesitation that the information came from recent hacking. These sales are happening mostly through Telegram and the dark web, which is, I'm sure you've heard, a website that requires special software to access. It's not just one website, it's hundreds of thousands maybe, making the transactions almost impossible to trace, very difficult to trace anyway. According to data obtained by lawmaker Chung Sung-kook, from 2021 to August 2025, schools and educational institutions in Korea had 317 data leaks, exposing more than 5.73 million pieces of personal information. The leaked data included student and parents' names, phone numbers, photos, bank account numbers, student grades, scholarship income levels, and these are considered the highest risk, by the way, sensitive information. Sensitive information is like 민감 정보? Yeah, like very easy, Police warned that these databases are extremely valuable to voice phishing groups. In the past, scammers called random people, but now criminals already know the child's name, school, and family background, allowing them to create highly believable scams called scenario phishing, targeted fraud that uses real personal data. Some scammers even use AI voice technology to mimic children's voices when asking parents for money. A police official said that phishing groups are now building detailed scripts based on specific regions, especially Gangnam, where they can find high-value targets with plenty of leaked data. So, a little bit scary. I live in this area, so it's a little bit, I'm worried for my students. Anyway, phishing is tricking someone to steal money. We have a big problem with that here in Korea. Leak is when private information is, I hesitate to say escapes, though sometimes it can escape on accident. Database is organized collection of information. Impersonation, think about it. Personation, to become another person. Fakely, like by lying, pretending to be someone else. Sensitive data, we talked about before. Personal information that must be protected because it contains a lot of value. All right. All scary news, huh? During his flight from South Africa to Turkey after the G20 summit, President Lee Jae-myung expressed serious concern about the current state of inter-Korean relations. Speaking to reporters aboard Korea's presidential aircraft, he said the situation is dangerous and that accidental military clashes to fight cannot be ruled out. North Korea's unusual border fortifications. President Lee said North Korea has installed triple-layer barbed wire fences along the MDL, which is the military demarcation line, the border between the two Koreas, something it has not done in decades since the Korean War armistice. He explained that North Korea's idea of the border and South Korea's idea of the border do not match. North Korean soldiers sometimes move into areas they consider their own and then fire warning shots when they believe South Korean forces cross the line. Lee warned that North Korea is refusing all dialogue and contact, making the situation very dangerous indeed. Because if a sudden clash happens, there will be no clear way to solve it. However, we're still committed to diplomacy. Despite this concern, Lee emphasized that he will not abandon dialogue. He said relying only on a hardline policy would make things worse. Instead, South Korea must maintain strong deterrence. Deterrence is the ability to prevent attacks by showing some strength. 억지로, I think is how it's said, while continuing efforts to persuade North Korea to return to talks. Lee also commented on unrepatriated long-term prisoners. Okay, this is a hard one. Let's break it down. These are elderly North Koreans imprisoned in the South who want to go back to the North. Make sense? He said many are in their 90s and there is no reason to prevent them from returning to their hometowns. There's a very famous one recently in the news who wants to go back. The NPS holds 43.9% of its assets overseas, meaning it regularly needs to buy large amounts of dollars to invest abroad. This demand for dollars has been cited as one of the structural reasons the exchange rate keeps rising. Strategic hedging by the NPS would involve selling dollars when the won becomes too weak, buying won to reduce exchange rate pressure, and some analysts say that 1,481 may be the threshold where the NPS begins hedging. Experts are divided about this. Using the NPS could help stabilize supply and demand in the FX market. When the pension fund signals hedging contracts, banks are required to sell more dollars, which increases dollar supply and can help lower the exchange rate. One economist said, if the economy weakens because of an unstable exchange rate, seniors' future income also suffers. So moderate hedging is reasonable. Critics warn, using pension funds to defend the exchange rate is a short-term fix, a 미봉책, that may harm pension returns. The NPS has followed a 100% open currency exchange, allowing full exposure to exchange rate changes, Juan Open, since 2015, which research shows is more profitable in the long run. At Yonsei University, a professor said that stabilizing the exchange rate temporarily will not solve underlying problems like weak domestic demand and slow growth, and could even reduce pension investment returns. In our words for this, we have exchange rate. This is the value of one currency when compared to another. Hedge is to protect against risk. Volatility is fast or quick changes in price or value. You can also use volatility in emotional state, to be quickly changing your emotion. Or in chemistry, something is volatile means it could change quickly, maybe explode. A fund is a large amount of managed money. An intervention is government stepping into the market. All right, we have a lot of bad news today. Let's end with some good news. In late 2025, the Smithsonian National Museum of Asian Art in Washington, D.C. opened a landmark exhibition called Korean Treasures, Collected, Cherished, and Shared. The show brings more than 200 works, including a dozen of Korea's highest-level cultural artifacts, designated national treasures, to U.S. audiences for the first time. Why does this matter? For decades, Korean art has often been showcased in Western museums as a side note to Chinese or Japanese collections. But this exhibition signals a turning point. Korean art is being recognized as a major independent voice in global art history. Scholars say this shift is decisive. The show draws heavily from the collection of the late Lee Kun-hee, one of Korea's most prolific art collectors, whose family donated over 23,000 works in 2021. It spans more than 1,500 years of Korean culture, from Buddhist sculptures of the Three Kingdoms period, gold-letter scriptures of Koryo, to minimalist modernist paintings of the 20th century. Curators decided to present the works thematically, not just by date, so visitors can feel connections across time and context. For example, a 19th century painted still life shows scholars' objects, chekkado, and an elegant moon jar from the Joseon dynasty watches over a contemporary inkwash painted side by side. By doing so, the museum wants Americans who associate Korea mostly with K-pop, K-drama, and K-beauty to see a deeper cultural legacy, like we talked about before. As one director says, we're as fanboyish or fangirlish as anyone else with Korean popular culture, but it's also important our audience understands the deep wellsprings, origins, of creativity in Korean culture. This exhibition arrives at a moment when Korean popular culture is sweeping the globe. The K-wave is stronger than ever, but the show reminds people that Korea's cultural strength isn't only new media and entertainment. It's built on centuries of artistic tradition. The Washington Post calls it the biggest thing that's going to happen this decade in Korean art history in North America. For Korean culture heritage, this is more than just an art show. It marks the moment when Korea, long seen as a peripheral in the field of East Asian art, now takes center stage. You'll be able to find a heavy lion-shaped drum from a temple, resonant with sounds of ritual tradition, Joseon-era court portraits, contemporary abstract works that with Korea's traditional motifs, and one particular piece of Joseon court art is placed alongside a modern film's imagery influenced by K-pop demon hunters, showing how traditional motifs continue to shape modern Korean culture. Our vocabulary from this, we have exhibit. It's a show in a museum. Cultural heritage, traditions and art from a culture, something you inherit from your ancestors. Preservation is to protect and to care for. Artifacts are historical objects, and a showcase is to present something proudly, often as a centerpiece, a main art. All right, that has been the news for today, Tuesday, November 25th. I hope you had a great day, and I hope this was very informative. I hope your drink was nice and warm or cool and refreshing, whichever one you chose. Mine sure was. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. It really helps me know what you guys like. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day. Goodbye. Hi, and welcome back to the Corey Teacher channel. Today's news roundup will be intermediate world news for Thursday, November 26th, 2025. Before we get started, get you something to drink, cold or warm. Keep yourself hydrated. Today I will be having Americano, even though it is cold outside. All right, make yourself comfortable. First, let's start with the weather. On Thursday, November 27th, it looks like it'll be sunny all day. There'll be a light wind from the west and a comfortable high of around 12 degrees Celsius, which is perfect for taking a walk outside before the winter really sets in. Get you a scarf and a hot coffee, and it's a romantic time, I think. All right, we ready? The big headlines today will be a little bit heavy, so prepare yourself. We're going to start with Ukraine. This war started almost 4 years ago on February 24th, 2022, when Russian troops crossed the border. It's caused so much pain for ordinary people. More than 10 million Ukrainians have left their homes, and the United Nations claims over 500,000 soldiers and civilians have died or have been hurt. Cities that were once full of life are now full of empty buildings and broken families. I had an acquaintance who lived in Ukraine right as it started. She was married to, or is married to, a Ukrainian man, and they almost waited too long to leave. The same day that they escaped and went to America, they began the draft to force men into war. So it was very scary. Last night was another very bad night for the capital city, Kiev. After midnight, air raid sirens started all over the city. The loud wail woke up everyone. More than 150 Russian drones were flying towards Ukraine from different directions. These drones are not very big. They look like small birds from far away, but they carry explosives and they fly low and slow, so they are hard to see on radar. Russia uses them because they are cheap and hard to stop. Ukraine has very good air defense teams now. They have learned a lot in the past 3 years on how to defend themselves from these kinds of attacks. They use missiles, guns, and even special fighter planes to shoot down most of the drones, more than 130 in total, but some drones still reach the city. One large drone hit a tall apartment building with 16 floors right in the center of Kiev. The explosion was huge. It sounded like thunder, according to people in the city. Windows broke in buildings 500 meters away. Fire started on the top floors immediately. The heat was so strong that it melted metal doors. People inside the building woke up to loud bangs and smoke. Many families ran down the stairs in the dark because electricity went off straight away. Mothers were seen carrying their children in their arms. Old people helped each other, holding hands to not get lost. Some people only had time to put on shoes. They left their phones, documents, and warm clothes behind. One father told reporters, "I grabbed my daughter and ran. We didn't even say goodbye to our things. The smoke was everywhere, like a black cloud inside our house." Firefighters arrived very quickly, within around 10 minutes. They used long ladders and hoses to reach the top floor. They saved more than 100 people from the burning building. Sadly, 2 women died. One was a grandmother, aged 68, who lived alone on the 14th floor. She was too weak to run fast. The other was a young nurse who worked at a children's hospital. She tried to help her neighbors before leaving. 23 more people are in hospital tonight. Some have bad burns on their skin, some have broken legs from jumping or falling downstairs, and some breathe too much smoke, which hurt their lungs. A man who lives on the 10th floor spoke to reporters this morning. He said, "I have lived in Kiev all my life. This is my city, full of history and parks. I never thought I would see my home on fire because of war. My wife and I carried our 2 small children down 12 floors. We were so scared. We only have the clothes we are wearing now. Where do we sleep tonight? How can we eat?" This kind of attack has happened a lot recently. In the last 7 days, more than 40 civilians have died in different Ukrainian cities while they are sleeping in their own beds. Ukraine says Russia is attacking normal people on purpose and that this is against the rules of war. The rules come from agreements like the Geneva Convention, which say you must not hurt people who are not fighting. Human rights groups like Amnesty International agree. They call it a war crime. At the same time, Ukraine is also attacking inside Russia. Early this morning, Ukrainian drones flew more than 500 kilometers across the border and hit a big oil depot near the Russian city of Bryansk. There was a series of explosions and a fire that lasted many hours. You could see thick black smoke from far away. It rose like a dark mountain. Russia says its firefighters put out the fire, but the oil depot is badly damaged. Workers there store fuel for cars and trucks, so now some deliveries are late. Because of this attack, the price of petrol, or gas, or oil, rather, went up a little all over the world today, about 2 cents per liter. Many countries are worried that the war will make energy more expensive again this winter. Oil is important for heating homes and running factories. If prices stay high, families in Europe and Asia will pay more at the pump. So the fighting continues on both sides, and ordinary people are the ones who suffer the most. Soldiers train hard, but it is the mothers, fathers, and children who lose their homes and feel the cold. That being said, soldiers that are forced into labor, they lose a lot more than just their homes. Sometimes they lose their lives. While the bombs and drones keep flying, some people are still trying to stop the war with words. Yesterday in Geneva, Switzerland, something important happened behind closed doors. The new American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, met Russian diplomats in a quiet hotel. No cameras, no journalists, just the 2 teams talking for almost 6 hours. Geneva is a neutral city, famous for peace talks, like the ones that ended World War II. The United States brought a new peace plan. It is very simple and has only 3 main points. Both armies stop shooting exactly where they are today. No more moving forward. This would create a ceasefire line, like a frozen border. Ukraine promises it will never join NATO. NATO is a group of 32 countries that help each other if attacked. Russia sees it as a threat near its home. Many of the economic sanctions on Russia will be removed little by little, but only if Russia keeps the peace. Sanctions are like punishments. They stop trade and make money hard to get. North Korea has many sanctions. Still, Iran had many sanctions for a long time, and now Russia does as well. President Zelensky said today, "We will study every word of this plan very carefully, but we will never give away 1 centimeter of our land. Crimea and Donbas are Ukraine forever." Crimea is a beautiful peninsula by the sea that Russia took in 2014, if you remember. And Donbas is an industrial area in the east with coal mines and factories. Many Ukrainians died to protect them. Many leaders in Europe are not happy with the American idea. Germany, France, Poland, and Lithuania and Estonia say it's unfair. They say Russia started the war, so Russia should not get prizes for stopping. The Prime Minister of Poland said, "This plan looks like Munich in 1938, giving land to stop a dictator. We have seen how that ends." In 1938, world leaders let Germany take part in Czechoslovakia to avoid war, but it only made Hitler stronger. Today, in Brussels, the European Union showed it still stands with Ukraine. The 27 countries agreed to give another 50 billion euros next year. The money will buy weapons like drones and missiles, repair power stations destroyed by attacks, and help families who lost their homes. The most interesting part, the money will come from taxes on Russian money that is frozen in European banks. Russia has about 300 billion euros stuck there since 2022. The EU President, Ursula von der Leyen, said clearly, "As long as the war continues, Europe will pay for Ukraine's defense. We will never leave them alone." This aid is like a big hug from their neighbors. It shows Ukraine is not fighting alone. Before we leave Ukraine, there's one more worry as winter comes. Right now in Kiev, the temperature drops to -5 degrees at night. In eastern cities like Kharkiv, it is already -10. Because of last year's Russian missile attacks, more than half of Ukraine's power stations are destroyed or damaged. That means most cities have no electricity for 8, 10, or even 12 hours a day. When there's no electricity, there's also no heating in apartments and no running water. Because the pumps stop working, because of electricity, the water doesn't flow. Hospitals use generators, but they run out of fuel too. The United Nations said that more than 10 million Ukrainians will need help to stay warm this winter. The elderly, small children, and sick people are in the greatest danger. Many families have bought small wood-burning stoves or electric generators, but they are very expensive and fuel is hard to find. In Kharkiv, close to the front line, some families have already started burning furniture, books, and even old doors to cook food with and to keep one room warm. A mother there said, "We read stories to our son from a book we burned last week. Now we have no more stories." Charities like the Red Cross are handing out thick blankets, warm coats, and firewood, but there is never enough for everyone. The UN has asked for $6 billion to help, but only half has come so far. The same problem is affecting the whole of Europe this winter. Before the war, many countries bought cheap gas from Russia through pipes under the sea. Now they buy from Norway, Qatar, and the United States. And the price is sometimes 3 or 4 times higher. In Germany, some big factories have to stop work early in the evening because electricity costs too much. Up to 40 euros for every 100 kilowatt hours. Wow. In France, the government is asking everyone to turn their heating down by 2 degrees to save energy. In the United Kingdom, many families say they have to choose between heating the house or buying food for their children. One British charity, Save the Children, says 1 child in every 4 now lives in a cold home. Bills are 96% higher than in 2021. Some countries have decided to open old coal mines again or keep coal power stations open even longer, even though they promised to stop using coal to fight climate change. Environmental groups like Greenpeace are angry, but governments say we cannot let people freeze. On the positive side, engineers in Poland and Lithuania finished a new underwater electricity cable this year called Harmony Link. It is 700 kilometers long under the Baltic Sea. It means the 2 countries that can send power to each other if Russia tries to cut supplies. It is a good example of how neighbors are helping each other more than before. Experts say more cables like this could make Europe stronger against energy problem. That is the latest from the Ukraine war. We'll, of course, keep you updated if anything else happens. The people of Ukraine need our thoughts and help. Let's take a little break here, a little palate cleanser. Palate cleanser is when something You taste bad or hear something bad, and you want to hear something good or taste something good. Just take a little palate cleanser, you know? All right. Some vocabulary. Ceasefire is to stop firing guns. A ceasefire is when both sides agree to stop shooting, even if it's for a short time. Agreeing to a ceasefire and then shooting anyway, it makes your country lose credibility. It's happening in the Middle East a lot recently. Air raid siren is an air raid, meaning some attack from the air, and the siren is a sound. Like we hear it sometimes on Wednesdays here in Seoul. These days, not so much, but used to. Sanctions are punishments that stop money and trade to hurt a country's economy. It's kind of warfare, but with dollar bills. All right, now onto something a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit. We're going to talk about the G20 summit in South Africa. There's climate promises. Also, there's a couple of missing individuals. Now we fly to South Africa for a very different kind of meeting. Today, the G20 summit finished in Johannesburg, South Africa. The G20 is the group of 20 biggest and richest countries: China, India, Brazil, the United States, Germany, Japan, South Africa, and 17 more. They control 80% of the world's money and trade. The summit happens every year to talk about big problems like poverty and jobs, climate change, etc. For 3 days, the leaders talked about money and trade, and especially about climate change. This year's theme was inclusive growth, which means helping everyone, not just the rich. This morning, they signed a long paper with many promises. The most important promise is the first time all 20 countries agreed to stop using coal and oil much faster. They said governments must stop giving money, subsidies, to coal, oil and gas companies by 2035. These subsidies, we mentioned subsidies in a previous news. Subsidy is money given from the government to aid in a business or a venture, some kind of business venture. These subsidies are like free gifts, about $7 trillion every year worldwide. Rich countries will give at least $10 billion every year to poor countries that suffer from hot weather, big storms, and rising seas. This money will build walls against floods and plant new trees. The United States did not want strong words about climate change. American diplomats tried to remove them because President Trump wants more oil drilling at home. But the other 19 countries said no. South Africa, Brazil, India, and China all said the strong words must stay. In the end, the United States had to accept the text. Experts say this is a win for the global South, the countries in Africa and Asia that feel climate change the most, but did the least to cause it. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was very happy. He stood on the stage with all the other leaders and said, "Today, Africa spoke and the whole world listened. This is not only a paper, this is a promise to our children and grandchildren." Ramaphosa is a lawyer who fought against apartheid, South Africa's old system of unfair and racially biased laws. Hosting the G20 is a big honor for this country, the most industrial in Africa. Outside the conference center, thousands of young people were singing and dancing in the street. They carried big signs that said, "Thank you, G20," and "The future starts today." Many of them come from countries that will suffer the most if the world gets hotter. Countries like Bangladesh, Kenya, and small island nations like the Maldives, where seas could cover homes soon. One student from Johannesburg said, "We are the generation that will live with your decisions. Please make them good ones." Well, that's a good line. That's a good line. I remember writing this down. I liked it a lot. The G20 meeting also talked about debt. Many poor countries borrowed a lot of money during the COVID years to buy vaccines and food. Now they cannot pay it back because of high interest. The leaders promised to make the rules easier so those countries can spend money on schools and hospitals instead of only paying banks. The International Monetary Fund says debt is a trap for 50 countries, and this promise could free up $100 billion. The G20 summit in Johannesburg also made news because of who was not there. The United States President Donald Trump decided not to attend. He called the summit a total disgrace and said no American officials would join the main talks. The White House sent only a low-level diplomat for the handover ceremony at the end, just to pass the G20 presidency to the United States for next year. Trump said this boycott is when you abstain or don't attend something or don't buy something for some purpose. Boycott, where was I? Is because of old claims about problems in South Africa. But many experts say those claims are not true. They come from false stories about land and race. Other big leaders were missing too. China's Xi Jinping sent his prime minister instead because of trade talks at home. And Russia's Vladimir Putin did not come because of a legal problem from the International Criminal Court. The court wants him for war crimes in Ukraine. It's one of the countries he cannot go to without being arrested. Even without these leaders, the meeting went ahead strongly. The family photo at the end showed the other presidents and prime ministers standing close together, smiling and waving. No empty spot for the United States. It was like the world was moving on without them. Newspapers today are saying this shows the G20 can work even when the biggest countries stay home. The South African president ended the meeting by saying, "We are 20 different countries, but today we acted like one family for the planet." Our work continues. Analysts say the strong climate words could push the United Nations COP30 talks next year in Brazil. But will the money really come? Poor countries have heard promises before that were not kept. All right. Our vocabulary, we talked about subsidies. This is money the government gives to keep prices low for food, farming, gas. There's many types of subsidies. A boycott is to refuse to take part in something as a way of protesting it. The global south, you can guess that this is countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, often with less of an economic impact on global trade. Now we go to a news story that is very sad and quite urgent. In the Philippines, yesterday afternoon, one of the strongest typhoons of the year hit the center of the country. Its name is Typhoon Kalmegi, when it reached land near Cebu Island, the wind near the center was more than 210 kilometers per hour. That is fast enough to destroy almost any house made of wood or light metal. Trees bend like grass and roofs fly away like paper in the wind. The typhoon moved slowly, so it dropped rain for more than 12 hours without stopping. Some places received almost 1 meter of rain in one day. Rivers became angry monsters, rising 3 meters high. Mud from the mountain came down in big landslides and buried whole villages. Roads turned into rivers, and bridges broke like sticks. So far, more than 130 people have passed away, and rescue workers say the number will probably go higher. The worst areas are the islands of Cebu, Bohol, and Negros. In one small town called Argao, more than 50 houses are completely gone. Only the foundations are left. In the mountain, a whole school full of children and teachers was covered by mud. Soldiers are still digging with their hands and machines to try and find anyone alive. One father waited by the school all night. He said, "My daughter was inside learning English. Now the mud took her. I pray she is okay." More than 100,000 families have lost their homes. They are now sleeping in school buildings, sports halls, and churches. The government opened more than 1,000 evacuation centers. Long lines of people wait for rice, clean water, and blankets. Many children are crying because they are hungry and cold. Mosquitoes are coming with the water, bringing disease like dengue fever. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. flew over the area by helicopter today. He looked very serious when he spoke to the nation tonight. He said, "My heart is broken when I see our people suffering. I promise we will rebuild every house, every school, every road, and we will build them stronger so the next storm cannot destroy them again. Marcos is from a famous family in Philippine politics. His father was president in the 1980s, but now he focuses on helping poor islands like these. The Philippines Red Cross says the most important things needed right now are clean drinking water, because the dirty water brings diseases like cholera, medicine for wounds and fever, plastic sheets to make temporary roofs, and mosquito nets because malaria can come quickly after floods. They have teams on the ground, but roads are still blocked. Many countries are already sending help. The United States sent 2 big ships full of food and tents from Guam. Japan and South Korea are sending money as well, around $100 million each. Even small countries like Timor-Leste sent a plane with blankets and clothes. The United Nations say this typhoon is part of a bigger problem. The Philippines gets about 20 typhoons every year, but the last 5 years have been the worst in history. Scientists say this typhoon was extra strong because the sea around the Philippines is 2 degrees warmer than it was 20 years ago. Warm water gives extra energy to storm, like fuel for a fire. Climate change from burning coal and oil makes oceans hotter, as you well know. People who live there say they're tired of losing everything again and again. A fisherman from Cebu Island said, "This is my 3rd typhoon this year. My boat is gone. My nets are gone. How do I feed my family? The government helps a little, but we need jobs and strong houses. The government says rebuilding will cost billions of dollars and will take many years. They are asking the rich countries that promised money at the G20 to send it quickly. They say, please do not only make promises on paper. Our people need help today." This is the latest from the Philippines. We'll keep following this story as often as the news comes out until the people are safe again. The world must act on climate change to stop more tragedies like these. Some vocabulary. We have landslide, which is when wet earth and rocks suddenly slide down a mountain. This can happen after earthquakes, after heavy rains. There's lots of things that can trigger it. An evacuation center is a safe building or a safe house. Often it's a school or a sports hall, usually like basketball courts or something like that, where people go during a disaster. To rebuild is to build something again after it was destroyed. Right. Let's take a quick drink break. How are you guys doing today? I hope that the cool weather is suiting you. It's not too windy where you are. All right, let's talk about the new volcano in Ethiopia. The Haile Gubi volcano eruption in Ethiopia. My correction, it's not a new volcano, but it's erupting again. Let's go to a very rare and dramatic event in Africa. Last Saturday, a volcano that had been sleeping for more than 12,000 years suddenly woke up. Its name is Haile Gubi, and it is in the Afar region of northern Ethiopia. The Afar is a hot, dry desert with salt lakes and nomads who walk with camels. On Saturday morning, the ground started to shake like an earthquake. Then a huge explosion opened a new crack in the earth, 2 kilometers long. Red-hot lava shot hundreds of meters into the air, glowing like the sun. A black ash cloud went 20 kilometers high, higher than most airplanes fly. NASA satellites saw it from space. The ash cloud moved east with the wind. It reached Yemen, Oman, Pakistan, and even western India. Many flights between Europe and Asia were canceled or delayed because volcanic ash can damage plane engines. It clogs them like a sand in a machine. Airports in Dubai, Doha, and Mumbai told passengers to wait. One pilot said, "We turned back because the sky was gray with ash. Safety first." Luckily, almost nobody lives near the volcano, so no one died. But local Afar people who keep camels and goats lost a lot of grass under the gray ash. Their animals coughed from the dust. The crops for food were buried. They now need food and water for their animals. The Ethiopian government sent trucks with hay and doctors for breathing problems. Aid groups like the Red Cross are helping as well. Scientists say this eruption is part of the Great Rift Valley. the place where the African continent is slowly splitting into two pieces. It happens 1 centimeter per year, like nails growing. Ethiopia sits on the edge, so volcanoes here are like Earth's way of stretching. Geologists from the University of Leeds watched it with drones. They say the lava is fresh and hot, 1,000 degrees Celsius. More volcanoes could become active in the next years, but likely not soon. This one lasted 3 days and is quiet now, but smoke is still rising. The eruption reminds us how powerful nature is. It also helps science. Rocks from volcanoes tell stories about Earth's past climate. For the Afar people, it is a challenge. One herder said, "The land gave us life, now it shakes. We move our tents and pray for rain to wash the ash away." The world watches, but local help is what matters most. An eruption is when a volcano explodes and sends out lava, ash, and smoke. Lava is the red-hot liquid that comes out of a volcano. It's not magma. Magma is what it is before it erupts. Lava is after. An ash cloud is the gray smoke full of tiny pieces of rock that can stop planes flying. Yeah. Now on to a listeria outbreak in the United States. Got a serious health warning. A dangerous bacteria called listeria has been found in ready-to-eat pasta meals sold in big supermarket chains like Walmart and Kroger's. Fun fact, I used to work at Kroger's when I was young. The meals come from one factory in California called Fresh Realm. So far, 27 people in 18 different states are sick, from New York to California. 6 people have died and 25 are in hospital. Most of the sick people are old, over 65, or pregnant women. Listeria likes weakened bodies. The symptoms start like normal flu. There's fever and muscle pain and some other symptoms, but then can become very serious. Bad headaches, stiff necks, confusion, and sometimes the person dies from an infection in the brain. It spreads through food that is not cooked hot enough, and the American Health Service, the FDA, has recalled millions of packets of macaroni and cheese, pasta salad, and chicken Alfredo. The problem started in June, but new cases came in November. If you bought any of these meals in the last 3 weeks, please look at the packet. I know here in South Korea, we're mostly safe, but still, if you're traveling abroad or if you have family in the United States, please tell them to be careful. If the factory codes matches the recall list on the FDA website, throw it away or take it back to the shop. Do not eat it, even if you overheat it. Don't eat it. Listeria survives microwaves sometimes. Doctors say wash hands and clean fridges to stop it. This outbreak shows how food from one place can affect the whole country. The factory is closed now for cleaning. Families say, "We trust the label, now we check everything." Stay safe, eat fresh and hot, obviously. Recall is when a company asks people to bring back dangerous foods or dangerous products. You can have a car recall or a food recall or even clothing recalls sometimes. Bacteria are very small living things that can make us sick. Sometimes not. Bacteria are very helpful for us too. There are good ones and bad ones. Symptoms, the signs that show you are ill. A headache is a symptom. Sneezing is a symptom. Fever is a symptom as well. That'll be all for today's news wrap up. Let me quickly remind you of what we learned. Ukraine suffered another night of drone attacks, but Europe promised 50 billion euros more help. And the cold winter is worrying everyone, not just those in Ukraine. The G20 made strong climate promises even without some big leaders present. Typhoon Kalmegi destroyed homes in the Philippines. Please keep those families in your thoughts. A volcano woke up after 12,000 years with health warnings going across America and Africa. The world has had its moments, but it also has kindness and people helping each other out. Thank you for spending your time with me. My name is Corey, and I'll be here till tomorrow with more clear, simple news. Until then, finish your delicious drink. I'll do the same. Stay warm and take care of the people that you love. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great week. Goodbye. Hi, and welcome back to the Corey Teacher News Roundup. Today is Friday, November 28th, 2025. And before we get started, I want to tell you this will be an advanced level news wrap-up. That means there will be a lot of jargon for specific fields, especially in science and markets. And if that's for you, then welcome. If not, that's okay. We have many other intermediate news as well as some basic news that you can listen to in the playlists. Before we get started, of course, always grab something delicious or refreshing to drink. Today, I don't know why, but I want to drink some milk, so I am having some milk. It's good. I don't know. I'm craving it for some reason. All right, everyone. Drink in hand. Let's get ready to talk about some little bit bad news, but that's okay. We're going to get through it and get to some good news. First, an update on Typhoon Kalmegi, locally in the Philippines. As of about 22 UTC last night, about 10 p.m., the Philippine death toll from Typhoon Kalmegi has climbed to 145, with the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council confirming 37 persons still unaccounted for, primarily in the landslide-buried municipalities of Moncayo and New Bataan in Davao de Oro. The storm, which made 4 landfalls across eastern Samar, northern Samar, and Masbate on the 24th and 25th of November, has now weakened into a tropical depression over the South China Sea, but left behind catastrophic fluvial flooding in the Visayas and northern Mindanao. Over 1.8 million people remain displaced, with the Department of Social Welfare and Development reporting critical shortages of potable water and high-energy biscuits in evacuation centers in Leyte and southern Leyte. Power restoration in eastern Visayas is projected to take until mid-December. The World Food Program has airlifted 180 metric tons of ready-to-eat meals into Tacloban, while the government has formally requested an additional $87 million in international assistance. President Marcos has declared a state of calamity in 11 provinces, unlocking price controls and emergency procurement powers. Meanwhile, in Africa, with the cholera surge, the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has revised its 2025 cholera figures upward to 312,400 laboratory-confirmed and suspect cases, and 7,310 deaths as the epidemiological week 47, marking the continent's worst outbreak since the 1998-2000 pandemic. Angola now accounts for 42% of the caseload. It's about 131,000 cases, driven by hyper-endemic transmission in Luanda's peri-urban informal settlements. Burundi has recorded the highest case fatality ratio at around 4.1%, reflecting collapsed isolation capacity in Ngozi and Kirundo provinces. A new clade of Vibrio cholera 01 Ogawa serotype exhibiting reduced susceptibility in azithromycin has been sequenced in samples from both countries, complicating oral rehydration plus antibiotic protocols. The WHO, or the World Health Organization, has pre-positioned 4.2 million doses of Uvicol oral cholera vaccine, but only 1.8 million have been developed so far because the competing yellow fever and mpox campaigns. Funding shortfalls exceed $240 million US dollars. Goodness, I was reading it backwards, prompting the Africa CDC to activate the Continental Incident Management Support Team for the first time since COVID-19. Meanwhile, in America, the Department of Homeland Security has quietly suspended all final green card adjudications for approximately 112,000 refugees who entered the United States under the Biden administration's U.S. Refugee Admissions Program between the fiscal years of 2021 and 2024. A leaked internal memo, first reported yesterday by Reuters, directs USCIS officers to place these cases in administrative hold. This is a direct quote, pending a 100-day interagency review that will include fresh security vetting interviews conducted by ICE and FBI personnel. Refugees from Afghanistan, which is around 76,000, Ukraine, around 19,000 or so, and certain African and Central American cohorts especially are heavily affected. Senior administration officials have told outlets that individuals deemed to pose even theoretical future risk, this is a direct quote, under broadened public charge and national security criteria could face revocation of refugee status and initiation of removal proceedings. The policy does not require congressional approval because it is framed as an exercise of existing parole and adjustment of status discretion. Advocacy groups have already filed federal lawsuits in California and New York, arguing the freeze violates the Refugee Act of 1980. So some vocabulary for this, because some of this is a little high in the jargon area. Adjudication is a noun, and it is the formal USCIS decision-making process that converts refugee status into permanent residency. The step is now indefinitely suspended. So, yeah. The removal proceedings, you can guess the meaning from removal. However, deportation cases initiated in immigration court. That's what this is used for. So, if they're going to deport someone, it's usually called removal proceedings. It's the technical term for it. Parole authority is the executive discretion used to admit refugees en masse. En masse is like in a big group. Afghans, for example, in 2021 are en masse. The legal hook the administration is exploiting to freeze adjustments without new legislation. All right, so Xi Jinping and Trump have had a telephone call recently. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping held a 68-minute call this afternoon. This is on Thursday. Their first direct contact since Trump's inauguration. According to readouts from both sides, the leaders discussed a few things. Number one, a possible Trump visit to Beijing in the first half of 2026. That would be a momentous occasion. Chinese purchases of U.S. soybeans and pork to offset existing phase one trade imbalances. The trade wars continue. Cooperation on fentanyl precursor interdiction. Beijing has agreed to resume real-time scheduling of new analogs. So, interesting. Ukraine and Trump, Trump reportedly pressed Xi to use China's leverage over Moscow to get the war finished fast. Xi reiterated Beijing's neutral stance, but expressed willingness to join any credible multilateral peace process. Very diplomatically worded. No joint statement was issued, but the tone was described by the White House as very positive and very direct. We'll see. Some vocabulary. Precursor chemicals is a plural noun for like the raw industrial compounds that Chinese firms export and which Mexican cartels convert into fentanyl. This is not just for China. It can be anywhere. Precursor chemicals are basically ingredients for drugs, or good or bad. Phase one trade agreement is a noun for the January 2020 deal under which China committed to buy an additional $200 billion in U.S. goods. It's still the benchmark for soybean and pork purchases discussions, even though the trade war is happening. And of course, scheduling. In this context, it means something a little different. It's the administrative act of adding a new chemical analog to China's controlled substance list, rendering its export illegal. So in this case, scheduling doesn't quite mean to write down in some calendar or make some time, but instead add it to a list. Got it? All right, let's talk about the U.S.-Ukraine 19-point peace framework. In Geneva, U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg and Ukrainian President Advisor Andriy Yermak concluded a second day of talks in Geneva on what is now being referred to internally as the 19-point framework. Key elements that have leaked to multiple outlets overnight include immediate 30-day renewable ceasefire along the current line of contact, creation of a 40-kilometer demilitarized buffer inside Russian-held territory administered by a neutral third-party force, likely Austrian-Swiss-led or some other neutral party, deferred referendum in Crimea and the 4 annexed oblasts under UN supervision no earlier than 2035. Okay. Lifting of U.S. secondary sanctions on Russia banks in exchange for verifiable withdrawal of North Korean units. European-led reconstruction fund seeded with frozen Russia central bank assets. as well as security guarantees for Ukraine that stop short of NATO Article 5 but include bilateral U.S.-Ukraine Defense Pact. Kiev sources describe the document as serious but containing red lines we cannot cross, while the Kremlin has dismissed it as detached from reality. President Trump, posting on Truth Social an hour ago, wrote, "Big progress today. Ukraine wants peace. Russia will too when they see the deal. Will be done soon," despite the comments of the leaders of both countries. So some vocabulary. Demilitarized buffer is a strip of territory of varying sizes. In this case, it's 40 kilometers along the Russian side, but not Ukrainian, from which all heavy weapons and troops must be withdrawn and continuously monitored. This to prevent surprise attacks. Deferred referendum is a noun that means, let's see, how can I explain it? A plebiscite on final status whose execution is postponed. So it's a decision or a referendum that is being deferred or postponed, either to another party or for another time. In this case, another time, which will be in 2035. Secondary sanctions is a plural noun meaning U.S. financial penalties imposed on third country banks and companies. Sanctions is a word that was used a lot a few years ago. Now, not so much, as trade wars and tariffs has taken over. However, sanctions are currently placed on Russia as well as North Korea and other countries as a kind of money war, if you will. All right, let's move on. In Nigeria, another school attack happened last week that is still making parents very worried. Early in the morning on Monday, November 18th, armed men on motorbikes arrived at a girls' school in Kebbi State, northwest Nigeria. The school is Government Girls Comprehensive Secondary School of MAGA, MAGA. They shot and killed the vice principal, a teacher named Malam Ibrahim, and took 25 students aged between 13 and 17. One girl managed to escape and run to a village. She hid in a bush and called for help. The others were taken into the thick forest on the border of Niger. Police and soldiers are searching, but the area is huge and dangerous, full of snakes and no roads. This kind of kidnapping happens too often in that part of Nigeria. Groups like bandits or Boko Haram want money or to scare people. Families usually have to pay large amounts of money, thousands of dollars, to get their children back. The government promises to find them, but it takes weeks. One mother said, "My daughter loves school. Now she is gone. I cannot sleep." Over 2,000 children have been taken since 2014. The world must help Nigeria to make schools safe again. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, a strong earthquake hit northern Afghanistan on November 3rd. It was a 6.3 on the Richter scale, and the center was near the city of Mazar-i-Sharif. 31 people died and more than 1,000 were injured. Many houses made of mud bricks fell down completely because the walls were thin. The beautiful blue mosque, more than 500 years old, with blue tiles like the sky, now has big cracks on its domes and walls. Engineers from the government are trying to save it before another earthquake comes. Aftershock shook the ground again yesterday, even though this happened some 20 days ago. The quake happened at night, so people were sleeping. Rescue teams used torches and dogs to find survivors under rubble. The United Nations sent tents and food because winter is cold there. One survivor said, "The earth roared like a lion. My home is gone, but my family is alive." Afghanistan has many earthquakes, but it sits on old mountains. Aid is slow because of bad roads and the Taliban government. The world sends help, but it needs to arrive fast. Take a little sip break here. I almost never crave milk. I don't know why I suddenly want it today. As for the vocabulary, these are simple ones. Kidnapping, I'm sure you heard before. Taking a person by force, not just children. It can be adults as well. Usually for the result of like wanting money, like a ransom. Rubble is the broken pieces of a building after an earthquake or bombing, or after it's destroyed by some other means. For example, if a building is being taken down by a construction crew, it creates rubble. An aftershock is a smaller earthquake that comes after the big one, sometimes weeks after. It's quite scary after big earthquakes because the aftershocks can cause tidal waves and stuff too, as you know. Time for some good news, though, in sports. In tennis, Italian star Jannik Sinner won the ATP Finals in Turin on Sunday night. The 24-year-old beat Carlos Alcaraz from Spain in two exciting sets, 7-6 and 7-5. The match lasted almost 3 hours with long rallies and big serves. Sinner is now officially the best player in the world for 2025, ending Alcaraz's 2-year run. He said, "This trophy is for Italy and my family." Fans in Turin cheered like it was a football win. In Canadian football, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are the new champions. They won the Grey Cup on Sunday evening, beating Montreal 25-17. It is their first title in 18 years. Quarterback Trevor Harris threw the 300-yard and 2 touchdowns. Threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fans in green jerseys celebrated all night with fireworks and hugs. One fan said, "Small town like Regina can beat the big teams." Amazing. In South Africa's rugby team, the Springboks continue to make their country proud. 6 of their players were chosen for the World Rugby Dream Team of the Year, more than any other team. Hooker Malcolm Marx was named the best player on the planet for his strong tackles and passes. The Springboks won the World Cup in 2023 and defended it last month. Captain Sia Kolisi said, "Rugby unites us after hard times." The vocabulary, this is important. A hooker is the player in the middle of the front row who throws the ball. It has another meaning that's much worse, but don't misunderstand. A hooker is the player in the middle. The Grey Cup is the big final match of Canadian football. It's something I'm not too aware of, even though I live in America. Or lived, not now. A rally in tennis is when players hit the ball back and forth many times without missing. These are always really exciting in tennis or in volleyball or in badminton as well. All right, we go now to the Middle East for a small message of hope. Pope Leo XIV arrived in Lebanon this Sunday for a 3-day visit. It'll be the first time a pope visits Lebanon in 13 years. The country has many problems. The economy is broken after a big port explosion in 2020, which I'm sure you remember. Those videos were insane. Half the people live in poverty, and there are more than 1 million refugees from Syria's war. Jobs are few, and bread lines are long. The Pope will meet Christian families, Muslim leaders, and young people from every religion. He wants to show that peace is still possible even when life is hard. Pope Leo, elected in May after Pope Francis was passing, is from Argentina and speaks Arabic a little. Many Lebanese people say the visit will give them new courage. One priest in Beirut said, "The Pope brings God's light to our dark days. Security is tight because of old fights, but the message is love. It could help talks with neighbors like Israel." Into space news, this week marked a pivotal advance for NASA's Artemis lunar exploration architecture. The Johnson Space Center's large-scale lunar regolith simulation facility in Houston, Texas, a joint NASA and ESA team, successfully concluded an integrated demonstration of autonomous surface systems critical to establishing sustained human presence on the moon. Over a continuous 96-hour trial, wheeled rovers equipped with contiguous extrusion additive manufacturing nozzles constructed a 38-meter square habitat structure using only processed lunar regolith stimulant. Regolith, by the way, is the name for the type of sand that's on the moon. It's very sharp and apparently good for constructing things. In parallel, a second robotic asset autonomously diagnosed, retrieved, and replaced degraded photovoltaic array segments on a mock power infrastructure operating without human teleoperation. I knew I was going to missay this word for the final 42 hours. When I wrote it, I thought, don't say teleportation. These tests validate 2 cornerstone capabilities for the Artemis Base Camp concept: in situ resource utilization, derived construction, and fully autonomous infrastructure maintenance. The habitat walls, printed in 11 hours at a rate of 1.8 meters per linear hour, exhibited compressive strength exceeding 22 MPa, while above 15 MPa baseline required for radiation and micrometeorite shielding. NASA's Artemis program director, Dr. Lakshmi Patel, stated that the results moved the timeline for an uncrewed Regulus printed outpost from speculative post-2035 scenarios to credible pre-2030 objective. The next major milestone will be Contai's 2028 Lunar Terrain Vehicle, LTV, uncrewed precursor mission, which will carry an upgraded 3D printing payload to the South Polar region. The achievement intensifies the emerging strategic parallelism with China's International Lunar Research Station, the ILRS roadmap, which envisions comparable robotic construction capabilities deployed by the mid-2030s. Both programs now appear on converging trajectories toward the first permanently inhabited lunar facilities. As one senior JSC engineer remarked, "We have effectively demonstrated builders that never tire, never require air, and can operate through the 14-day lunar night. This is the inflection point between visiting the moon and living on it." As for the vocabulary, there's a lot of jargon in this one, but I picked these three. In situ resource utilization, ISRU is a noun that means the practice of extracting and processing raw materials at the site of exploration. Here it's lunar regolith, but if it was, like, say, in the desert, it would be sand, for example, to produce construction, feedstock, oxygen, or propellant, whatever it may be. The successful regolith-based 3D printing demonstrated that future lunar habitats can be built predominantly from local material, which is important because every kilogram or every gram costs a lot of money to put into the atmosphere, to put into space. Contiguous extrusion additive manufacturing is a specialized large-scale 3D printing technique in which a mobile robotic nozzle continuously extrudes, or pumps out, a binding agent regolith mixture to form load-bearing structures without layer seams. Effectively, just 3D printing with a giant robot arm using local materials. This method has achieved a 38-meter square habitat walls in a single 11-hour print run, which is quite good, eliminating the weaknesses inherent in traditional stop-start layered deposition. All right. Compressive strength exceeding 22 MPa. All right. The measured ability of the printed regolith walls to withstand more than 22 megapascals, that's what MPa is for, of crushing force, far surpassing the 15 MPa minimum required for shielding against cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts, which is a danger. A micrometeorite in the wrong place at the right time can cause instant depressurization of some suits or anything below 15 MPa, as well as cosmic radiation can be effectively deadly if not shielded properly. This mechanical performance confirms that robotically printed lunar structures can serve as safe, permanent human habitation without supplementary imported materials, which is huge. I'm really excited about this. I hope that in the future, it really moves forward into something more, I don't want to say commercial, but at least more widespread. And for our final note today, we're going to talk about some news from Kenya. On the evening of the 12th of November, a poignant episode of inter-herd elephant diplomacy unfolded at the Voi and Reintegration Unit of the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, underscoring the profound social complexity and long-term memory for which Loxodonta africana is renowned. Loxodonta africana being elephants. Naipoki, a 12-year-old female orphaned in 2013. By the way, if you didn't know, that's the taxonomy for the animal. I'm sorry, I was being a little cheeky. Naipoki, a 12-year-old female orphan in 2013 and hand-reared by the trust, returned to the midday stockade in the company of her inseparable companion, Rorogoi, and an unexpected addition, a roughly 3-week-old wild-born bull calf later named Nsimba. Keepers immediately noted the calf's extreme dehydration and umbilical infection, suggesting he had been separated from his natal herd during a skirmish with a territorial wild matriarch. Within hours, however, a contingent of wild elephants, led by a formidable ex-orphan matriarch known as Emily's herd, executed what keepers describe as a deliberate abduction. The group encircled the stockade, vocalized in low-frequency rumbles, and physically extracted Nsimba through a gap in the wire, escorting him 14 kilometers into the southern sector of Tsavo East before nightfall. Trust field teams pursued in 4x4 vehicles for more than 6 hours, navigating dense Commiphora acacia scrubs, a type of plant. Under thermal imaging guidance, at 2:17 on the 13th of November, they located the calf fully integrated into the wild herd, nursing from an unrelated allo mother and displaying no further distress. Naipoki, standing sentinel at the periphery, exchanged prolonged trunk touch greetings with the adoptive matriarch, an interaction captured on infrared footage that has since garnered over 42 million views across all platforms. Dr. Dame Daphne Sheldrick's legacy organization has now documented more than 300 successful orphan reintegrations since 1977. Yet this incident is believed to be the first recorded instance of wild elephants actively reclaiming a rescued calf deemed viable for immediate wild adoption. Veterinary assessment confirmed Nsimba's robust health, obviating the need for further human intervention. As one senior keeper reflected, these are not random events. They are deliberate family decisions spanning generations. Naipoki brought the baby home for help, and the wild herd decided he belonged with them. We are privileged guests in their kinship network. The episode serves as a vivid counter-narrative on the ongoing ivory poaching crisis that has reduced Kenya's elephant population by 60% since 1979, reminding the global public that conservation success is measured not merely in numbers, but in restored social fabrics that once again function without human mediation. So we have some vocabulary. Number one is allo mother. This one is not a common word, very uncommon, but it is a non-biological female, often a nulliparous adolescent or unrelated adult, who provides maternal care, such as nursing, protection, or grooming to another female's offspring. In this case, the wild cow that immediately began lactating for Nsimba. A lot of times we would just say an auntie or like a stepmother or something like that. But allo mother is the technical noun for this type of interaction. Reintegration stockades is a plural noun for purpose-built enclosures with gradually diminishing human contact that serve as transitional halfway houses, enabling hand-reared orphans, or hand-raised, to rejoin wild conspecific herds while retaining access to supplementary milk and veterinary care. Think of it in a simple way would be a kind of halfway house or a kind of stop-off station that'll still offer help to wild animals in the process of integrating into the normal, into nature. All right, and finally, low-frequency rumbles, you can guess, are infrasonic vocalizations. I'm sure you've heard these. If you've seen elephants in public or at the zoo, they often make this low rumbling sound, and they'll hit their trunks on the ground. It's very interesting. You can feel it vibrating in your chest. These are produced by elephants that propagate over several kilometers through soil and air, functioning as long-distance coordination signals. The precise modality used by the wild herd to orchestrate Nsimba's extraction and reassure Naipoki to his safety. So that's all for today's global news. Let me quickly remind you that this was an advanced level. So if you found this quite difficult, which is, it probably honestly is, this is native level or beyond. There was a lot of jargon in this one, but that's on purpose. If this is too difficult, by and large, please let me know in the comments down below. I will adjust this to be more advanced conversational. This one is, these are pulled directly from fields, that from news sites in the field. And then I reconstructed the story to make it more condensed. So if you like this, leave a like. If you don't, I also appreciate the like and subscribe. I will change this in the future if it is necessary. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful week. Try to stay warm. It's about to turn really cold here in South Korea. And from here in Seoul, I have been Corey, and I hope you have a wonderful time. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It will soon be November 29th, Saturday, 2025, here in South Korea. Today, we will do intermediate Korean news. So the English will be intermediate level at intermediate speed. This week will look pretty nice this weekend here in Seoul. Saturday, the 29th, is partly sunny nationwide with highs around 10 to 14 degrees Celsius, but even warmer down in the south. Sunday, the 30th, will stay dry and mild, around 11 to 15 degrees. Last little bump of warm before really hitting the winter weather. It's projected to have some snow this weekend, or next week, rather. So be prepared for that. Quick check before we get started. What are you guys drinking tonight or today? whatever time it is where you are. I'm being a bit basic today. It's just water. I wanted to have some tea, but I don't know, something called me. All right, let me know what you're drinking in the comments down below. I always like to hear it. All right, let's get started and see what is moving in Korea. The Korea Gallup has released its weekly survey this morning, with President Lee Jae-myung's job approval rating now standing at 59%. That's a drop of 4 percentage points from the last week's 63%, marking the steepest single-week decline since he took office in June. Full numbers for context: positive evaluation, meaning he's doing well, was around 59%. Negative evaluation, doing poorly, around 34%. This is up 4% from last time. And no opinion or neutral, 7%. The poll was conducted November 24th to 26th among 1,002 adults nationwide, with a 95% confidence interval of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points. To put 59% in historical perspective, it remains higher than most Korean presidents have registered at the 6-month mark over the past 20 years. For comparison, President Yoon Suk-yeol was already in the low 30s by this point in his term. President Moon Jae-in hovered in the mid-40s for long stretches as well. So objectively, the president still enjoys relative solid public support. That said, the direction and speed of the change are noteworthy. Gallup itself highlighted that this is the first time President Lee has fallen below the 60% threshold, and the 4-point shift is statistically meaningful. The primary reason cited by respondents and political analysts appears to be the Blue House decision, announced last week, not to repeal the recent acquittal of several high-ranking officials from the previous administration in a closely watched abuse of power case. The presidential office described the move as an effort to end divisive political prosecutions and focus on national unity and the economy. Critics, including some within the president's own Democratic Party base, have argued that it risks being perceived as leniency towards figures associated with the prior government's controversies. Compounding the timing, a fabricated video circulating online on social media over the weekend falsely depicted President Lee giving direct instructions to prosecutors. The Blue House quickly denounced it as a deepfake and referred the matter to police for investigation as a serious criminal act. While the video has been removed from major platforms, it still contributed to online discussion and a lot of confusion. Age group breakdowns show the drop is mostly pronounced among voters in their 20s and 30s, a demographic that provided President Lee some of his strongest support during the election. Regional differences are still within the margin of error, with the decline fairly evenly distributed across the country. Presidential aides have responded cautiously, noting that weekly polls can fluctuate and that the administration remains focused on its core agenda: economic recovery, housing stability, and inter-Korean dialogue. The next Gallup survey, due next Friday, will give the first indication of whether this is a temporary dip or the start of a longer trend. That's the latest on the approval numbers. We got some vocabulary here. First, approval rating is the percentage of people in a poll who say they think the president, or any person that is being polled, is doing a good job. Acquittal is a court decision that says someone is not guilty. In this case, former officials were found not guilty, and the government chose not to challenge that verdict. A deepfake, I'm sure you've heard this before, is a realistic-looking fake video or audio created with artificial intelligence, often used to mislead people. All right, now moving into North Korea and Russia. North Korea state media reported this week that senior military officials from North Korea and Russia held talks in Pyongyang to discuss expanding their cooperation amid ongoing developments related to Russia's war in Ukraine. The meeting took place on November 6th, with North Korea North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, releasing details on November 7th. According to the KCNA, the discussions involved North Korean Defense Minister No Kwang-chol and Russia's Vice Defense Minister Viktor Gormikin. The two sides focused on strengthening military ties in line with the deepened bilateral relations between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The report emphasized mutual interest and alignment on international issues, but did not disclose any specific agreements or outcomes from the talks. This news may seem a little bit older as it happened in November 6th, but it is still relevant to recent events here in South Korea. This comes at a time when North Korea and Russia have been deepening their strategic partnership. Earlier this year, the two nations signed a comprehensive treaty in June that includes mutual defense provisions, marking a significant escalation from their historical Cold War-era ties. Since then, reports from South Korea and Western intelligence agencies have indicated increased exchanges in military technology, resources, and personnel. For context, South Korea's National Intelligence Service briefed lawmakers on November 4th that North Korea has deployed approximately 15,000 troops to Russia since last fall to support operations in Ukraine. These forces are believed to be integrated into Russian units, primarily in the Kursk region. Additionally, Pyongyang has supplied substantial quantities of artillery shells, ballistic missiles, and other equipment to Moscow, estimated in the hundreds of millions of rounds. In return, Russia has reportedly been providing North Korea with advanced military technology, including potential assistance in satellite and missile programs, as well as food and fuel aid to help alleviate economic pressures from international sanctions. The intelligence briefing also highlighted signs of new recruitment and training activities within North Korea, possibly preparing for further troop rotations or expansions. Around 5,000 North Korean military construction workers and deminers have been sent into Russia's Kursk area since September, focusing on infrastructure restoration and mine clearance in war-affected zones. From the international perspective, these developments have raised concerns among South Koreans, the United States, and European allies. South Korea's foreign ministry issued a statement on November 7th expressing deep worry over the talks, calling them a direct threat to regional stability and urging Pyongyang to cease its military provocations. The U.S. State Department echoed this, noting on November 7th that such cooperation prolongs, this is a quote, the suffering in Ukraine and undermines global non-proliferation efforts. Analysts point out that North Korean involvement could expose its troops to modern combat experience, potentially enhancing Pyongyang's own military capabilities upon their return. On the North Korean side, KCNA framed the meetings positively, describing them as fruitful exchange that bolsters anti-imperialist solidarity. Independent verification is limited, as foreign journalists were not permitted to attend, and details rely heavily on state-controlled media. Broader implications for the Korean Peninsula include heightened tensions along the inter-Korean border. South Korea's military has increased surveillance and readiness levels in response to this activity, with President Lee Jae-myung's administration emphasizing diplomatic channels to deter escalation. This partnership also complicates ongoing U.S.-South Korea alliance strategies as it draws Russia deeper into Northeast Asian geopolitics. Experts from think tanks like the Center for Strategic and International Studies suggest these talks signal a long-term alignment, potentially leading to more formalized joint exercises or technology transfers in the coming months. However, the lack of concrete announcement leaves room for speculation on the immediate next steps. For our vocabulary, we have mutual defense clause. This is also a mutual defense treaty, is a part of a treaty that says if you get attacked, I will come help you, and vice versa. A ballistic missile is a rocket that flies high into the sky and then falls back down at a very high speed. They're much harder to stop than regular artillery. And sanctions, as you well know, and we've talked about in previous news, are official punishments. Think of it as economic warfare, money that fights for you. All right. The investigation into the tragic Jeju Air Flight 2216 crash, which claimed 179 lives in December 2024, is taking a significant step forward with a public hearing scheduled for early next month. The Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board, ARAIB, announced on November 19th that it will hold a 2-day event on December 4th and December 5th to present its interim findings. Interim meaning in the middle of their investigation. This comes nearly a year after the Boeing 737-800 flying from Bangkok to Muan International Airport attempted an emergency belly landing, overshot the runway, struck a concrete localizer mound, and burst into flames, marking South Korea's deadliest aviation disaster ever. The crash occurred when the plane, carrying 181 people, suffered a bird strike that damaged both engines as it approached the airport. Evidence from the wreckage confirmed remains of migratory ducts in the engines, with the right one sustaining more severe impact. However, earlier interim updates from July revealed that the left engine, which was less damaged, was shut down by the pilots just 19 seconds after the initial strike. ARAIB's preliminary analysis suggested the aircraft could have continued flying on the remaining power, but the full context of the crew's decision remains under review. Notably, both the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder stopped functioning about 4 minutes before the Mayday call, complicating efforts to reconstruct the final moments. The upcoming hearing aims to address these and other factors, including potential issues with the runway's safety infrastructure. Specifically, the unyielding concrete barrier that the plane hit, which has drawn international scrutiny for possibly exacerbating, making worse, the outcome. Similar structures at other airports, like the one at Halifax, Canada in 2018, were designed to break apart on impact to reduce harm, prompting calls for a global review of runway end safety zones. This development, I see a mosquito. Got it. Sorry. Anyway, this development follows months of tension between investigators and stakeholders. In July, ARAIB's focus on the engine shutdown drew sharp criticism from the victims' families and Jeju Air Pilots Union, who argued it overlooked broader causes like airport design or procedural gaps. The Bereaved Families Association has now vowed to boycott the December hearing, citing concerns over the board's neutrality and independence. They point to ARAIB's government ties and past handling of aviation incidents as reasons for doubt. Back in May, dozens of families even petitioned police to probe 15 officials and executives, including Jeju Air's CEO and the transport minister, for alleged safety violations. In response to the crash, authorities grounded all Boeing 737-800s in South Korea for inspections in late December 2024, just to be safe, later expanding reviews of Jeju Air's safety standards. The airline's CEO issued apologies and barred himself from international travel during the probe, while a bipartisan National Assembly committee was formed in January to oversee the process. Internationally, victims' families filed a lawsuit against Boeing in October in Seattle, alleging failures in critical landing gear and other equipment. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport has stressed that the hearing will be transparent, with opportunities for public input through ARAIB has not confirmed if boycotting families will participate remotely. A final report is not expected until mid-2026, as experts continue to analyze data from the black boxes, simulations, and witness accounts. For now, the focus remains on supporting the two survivors, both flight attendants who escaped the tail section, and the grieving families, many of whom continue to seek clarity and accountability. This hearing could provide the first comprehensive public update in months, potentially shedding light on preventative measures for future flights. Aviation safety advocates hope it leads to concrete reforms, especially as South Korea's budget carriers like Jeju Air handle millions of passengers annually. That's the latest on the probe. The aviation community is watching closely, and I'll follow up when the hearing occurs in about a week or so. One of my friends got me some electrolyte drink. I really hope I'm not getting sick. It'll be hard to read the news. The vocabulary for this, number one, bird strike. We can guess the meaning, but just in case, when a bird collides with an aircraft, this is usually in the engine. This doesn't happen that often. It usually happens during takeoff or landing, not in mid-flight. Despite what people say, air traffic is the safest way to travel by far. Localizer is a ground-based navigation aid that helps guide planes precisely onto a runway during approach. This helps especially if there is some system failure. Yeah, it helps. Interim findings, like I said before, are preliminary or first wave results, kind of like a rough draft, or conclusions from an investigation released before the full final report is complete. All right, let's move on to more space news. South Korea's space program marked a major milestone early this morning with successful fourth launch of its domestically developed Nuri rocket from the Naro Space Center in Gohang. The liftoff occurred at 1:13 a.m. local time, just 18 minutes behind the planned window due to a minor sensor calibration issue, carrying the country's largest satellite to date, along with 12 smaller CubeSats into orbit. The mission, dubbed Nuri 4, was confirmed as a full success by the Korean Aerospace Administration, KASA, or KASA, and the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, KARI, K-A-R-I, just over an hour after launch. The primary payload, the Next Generation Medium Satellite 3, called NextSat-3, also known as CAS-500-3, is a 500-kilogram Earth observation platform designed for high-resolution imaging and technology demonstrations in areas like optical sensors and propulsion systems. It established initial communication with ground control at South Korea's King Sejong Station in Antarctica by 1:55 a.m., quite quick, allowing engineers to verify its systems and confirm stable orbit insertion by approximately 687 kilometers altitude. I do apologize when we move into especially science, rocket science, etc., the jargon increases to a higher level. This is a good test. I believe in you. You can do it. But I do apologize. It's hard to talk about it without using some of the words. The 13 secondary satellites, including CubeSats from universities, research institutions, and private firms, were deployed sequentially over the following hours, with all reporting nominal performance by mid-morning. Science and ICT Minister Bae Kyung-hoon announced the results at a briefing on site, stating, "All satellites have been successfully placed into their intended orbits, and the Nuri rocket has once again proven its reliability." This marks the first Nuri launch since the third successful flight in May 2023, following a 2.5-year hiatus or break to incorporate upgrades and address lessons from prior missions. What makes this launch particularly noteworthy is its role as the inaugural effort led by a private sector partner. Hanwha Aerospace, a major defense and space conglomerate, took charge of the rocket's manufacturing, assembly, and integration under a technology transfer from KARI, a key step in South Korea's push towards a commercial space industry. This collaboration aligns with CASA's broader vision established earlier this year to foster public-private partnerships and reduce reliance on government funding for future launches. For historical context, the Nuri program, officially the Korea Space Launch Vehicle 2, KSLV-2, has come a long way since its rocky debut. The first attempt in October 2021 partially failed when the third stage engine shut down prematurely, preventing payload deployment. The second and third launches in June 2022 and May 2023, however, were unqualified successes, paving the way for its fourth flight. Nuri, a three-stage liquid-fueled rocket standing 155 feet tall and weighing 200 tons, is capable of delivering up to 2.6 tons to low Earth orbit, positioning South Korea among the elite group of nations with independent, heavy lift capabilities. Looking ahead, this success clears the path for the remaining two launches in the six-mission program through 2027, including plans for lunar orbit insertions and potential crewed mission precursors. CASA Administrator Yoon Young-bin highlighted the event's significance, noting it as the first launch under CASA's new framework and a testament to our industry's growing maturity. Minor regional advisories were issued beforehand for potential debris fallout in the Yellow Sea, but no issues were reported. The achievement has been widely celebrated domestically, with live broadcasts drawing millions of viewers and social media buzzing about South Korea's rising profile in global space exploration. Internationally, it underscores Seoul's ambitions amid competition from neighbors like China and Japan, while bolstering ties with allies through shared satellite data for climate and security monitoring. I'm very proud of South Korea for this. I'm very into this field. I like it very much, and I'm very happy that it has been an unmitigated success. For some vocabulary, we have payload. A payload is the cargo or equipment that is carried into orbit. A payload is usually with rockets. Saying a payload on a boat feels a little strange. Maybe on an airplane feels okay. Yeah, payload on an airplane feels okay. Or it could feel okay if it's a missile or some sort of weapon, like the payload. Yeah, that makes sense too. That gets delivered to space for a specific purpose. That's another point. CubeSat is a small standardized satellite, often about the size of a shoebox, used for research, education, or testing new technologies in orbit. Nominal is a common term used in rocketry, as well as in aeronautics, to mean normal, or as expected, like when a system is working correctly with no problems. More good news now. South Korea's Ministry of Data and Statistics released preliminary figures this week showing a continued uptick in both births and marriages, offering a glimmer of optimism in the country's long-standing demographic challenges. For September 2025, the number of births reached 22,369, an increase of 8.6% from the 20,589 recorded the same month a year earlier. This marks the 15th consecutive month of growth in newborns, the highest September total since 2020, and the largest single-month rise in nearly 2 decades. The surge aligns with broader trends. Births have been climbing since July 2024, driven in part by the expanding cohort of women in their early 30s. The number of women in their early 30s has increased, and as you know, here in Korea, this is the most common age to get married. Many of my friends are getting married or have been married, and they are now choosing to have children as well. Officials project that the full year total for 2025 could surpass last year's 238,317, potentially ending a multi-year decline and signaling the first sustained rebound in fertility rates in over a decade. The crude birth rate, babies per 1,000 people, now stands at around 4.7, up slightly from previous months, though it remains far below the replacement level of 2.1 needed to maintain population stability. Marriages are playing a key role here, as they often precede births in a society where out-of-wedlock pregnancies are exceedingly rare. September saw 18,462 weddings, a sharp 20% jump from the prior year, 20.1% to be exact. The highest growth rate in absolute numbers ever recorded for the month since data collection began in 1970. Year to date, through the first 9 months, marriages totaled 176,178, up 8.9%, or 14,417 from the same period in 2024. This follows a post-pandemic rebound, with pent-up demand from delayed ceremonies contributing to the momentum. The 1 to 2 year long lag between marriages and births means these figures could sustain the positive trajectory into 2026 and beyond. Experts attribute the trends to a mix of factors: government initiatives under Lee Jae-myung administration, including expanded childcare subsidies, flexible work policies, and housing incentives for young families. These appear to be gaining traction alongside a modest shift in social attitudes. A recent Statistics Korea survey found that 52.5% of Koreans now view marriage positively, up from 50% 2 years ago, reflecting subtle changes in perceptions amid economic recovery. The growing number of women in their 30s, part of the echo boom generation from the 1990s, is also a structural boost, as this demographic tends to have higher fertility rates than younger cohorts. That said, challenges persist. The overall fertility rate hovers around 0.75, still the world's lowest, and deaths in September dipped 3.9% to 28,101, leading to a natural population decrease of 5,732 for the month. Divorces rose 5.7% to 7,959, a counterpoint to the marriage gains. Demographers caution that while those numbers are encouraging, reversing the aging crisis will require sustained efforts in affordability, gender equity, and work-life balance. The ministry plans to release a more detailed quarterly report next month, which could define these projections. For now, it's a rare bright spot in the data, suggesting that policy tweaks and societal shifts might be starting to bend the curve. That's the latest on demographic front. Cross your fingers for more good news in the future. We have a few words here. We have crude birth rate, which I explained before, is the number of live births per 1,000 people in a population over some given period. It can be over a month, a year, a decade. It's a simple way to measure fertility trends. Cohort is a group of people who share a common characteristic, like age or birth year, often studied together for demographic patterns or trends. Fertility rate is the average number of children a woman is expected to have over her lifetime, used to gauge long-term population potential. All right, that's everything that's moving in Korea today. As always, if I miss something you're following or you want to go deeper into any of these stories, please feel free to comment down below. Let me know what works and what doesn't. Is my speed too fast, too slow? Anything is fine. I appreciate it very much, and I do read the comments as much as I can. If you enjoyed this update, give it a like. Subscribe if you want to see more, and if you want to be updated every time we post something, hit the little bell just below in the box. Wishing you and everyone else with you and around you a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Enjoy the last little bits of warmth before it turns fully winter. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.